Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku had devil fruit powers and had harem? Part 1. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is The Devil Fruit Pirate by Camdog 2. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. Today was not a good day for Izuku Midoriya and the other members of Class 1A who had just went through and emerged victorious from a surprise attack that was orchestrated by a group calling themselves the League of Villains. The fighting was tough and everyone had suffered their fair share of injuries, none more so than their teachers 13 and Shota Aizawa, otherwise known as Eraserhead. In the end though, it didn't matter, they had won, and with everyone surviving in the end, with the only villains that managed to get away were Tamura Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Right now though, the class was simply waiting for the rest of the teachers to show up and help them take down the barrier. And although the students had mixed feelings about their teachers right now, they were quite frankly glad it was over. Or so they thought. Izuku's haki flared to life as he jumped to his feet and rushed over to where Ochako Uraraka and Tsuyu Asui chatting. "Hey Izuku. What's wrong?" Ochako asked before her eyes widened when a familiar black mist appeared right behind them. "This is," Tsuyu said before being grabbed by Izuku and out of the way as the other students either got into fighting positions or out of the way of those who were going to fight. "Greetings once again." Kurogiri spoke this time, pulling himself together into a humanoid form while also holding what looks like a syringe in his hands. "So sorry to show up so soon after our last meeting, however, due to some unforeseen complications," he said, looking at Izuku as he did so. "My master sent me here to ensure those complications don't meddle in our future plans," he said, getting a snort from Izuku. "And just how do you plan on doing that?" he asked with crossed arms while the mist villain chuckled. "With this," he said simply before stabbing the needle into his neck before spazzing rapidly and stumbling for a few seconds before the drug activated. The effects were instantly noticeable as Kurogiri became a hurricane of mist, blowing some of the students back while Mezzo and Rikido guarded the teachers while ignoring their orders to help them up. Kurogiri laughed as he saw how strong his quirk had become. "Trigger truly is wondrous thing," he thought before turning his attention to Izuku, who had narrowed his eyes at the mist villain. "Now on to business." "Damn it. What do we do now?" Katsuki Bakugo asked, trying to think of a way out of this mess before noticing Izuku charging forward, his hands covered in darkness, his intention obvious. "Don't be an idiot, Deku," he tried to warn, but it was too late, because a second he was able to come in contact with Kurogiri and take away his quirk, Izuku was engulfed in Kurogiri's quirk and vanished. It was silent as a grave as the class processed what just happened, and the silence was broken by the mist villain himself. "Well, that's him out of the way." Line break. "Damn it, what was I thinking, charring in like an idiot?" Izuku berated himself as he tried to make heads or tails of where the mist could be taking him. "To the bottom of the ocean for all I know," he thought with sweat dripping down his face as he prepared for the worst. Which is why it came as shock when he found himself at a coastline where a pool was linked to the ocean by a closed steel gates. The place, while it did look vaguely familiar, couldn't have been anywhere near Japan since it was mid-afternoon in Japan and it was the dead of night here. However, before he could look around, a deep voice full of mock and loathing spoke up. "Oh, human, just what the hell are you doing at my base?" Izuku froze as he heard the voice, not in fear but in shock as he had remembered hearing that voice before in his dreams. "It can't be," Izuku thought as he slowly turned around to see who was talking and prove he wasn't who he thought he was, only for a single to enter his mind when he saw who spoke. "It is," he thought as stared at the figure in front of him. "You're Arlong the Saw," Izuku spoke in disbelief before looking around quickly. "This is Arlong Park," he said as he took in the Fishmen's main base behind while noticing that various fishermen were slowly surrounding them. Arlong meanwhile smirked in arrogance and superiority as he took Izuku's disbelief for fear. "So you've heard of me, glad to see my name is becoming well known. But seeing as you're new here and seem to have no way of this island that makes you a citizen here, meaning you owe me some money," he said as he gripped Izuku's shoulders in an attempt to scare the teen. This snapped Izuku out of his daze and finally let it sink in that this was Arlong the Saw. Call what happened next a lapse in judgment on Izuku's part, but after all the crap Izuku's been through today, being stuck in another world, albeit one he knows very well, and the fact he was being hassled by scum like this, he felt his next action justified. "Now seeing as this is your first time, I'll you off with a mere arc," Arlong was cut off from whatever he was going to say next as he found Izuku's hockey-covered fist planted in his stomach, forcing him to his knees before wrenching up a puddle of blood. This bastard hit me harder than when Jinbei did. He thought, enraged at that this inferior human would dare strike him before looking up at him with a glare. You worthless. Bam! Arlong's head was smashed face first into his own blood thanks to Izuku slamming his foot into the back of the saw shark fishman head. Naturally his crew didn't take this well. That bastard human. How dare you? You'll pay for what did. And soon Izuku found himself being charged by close to 40 fishmen, to which Izuku only scoffed at before lighting coated his arms before firing lighting bolts at the fishmen, with each bolt electrocuting every fishman that hit before continuing on to the next until all were on the ground fried to crisps. Izuku's haki activated and he absent-mindedly activated the dice fruit to block 6 swords suddenly coming from him as he looked at octopus fishmen in front of him. Hatchin. He noticed seeing the actual kind fishman before noticing his confused look. What the swordsman said, however, made Izuku want to kick his own dumbass. You have 2 devil fruits? He asked, since as far as anyone knew if you ate more than one you died. Izuku meanwhile cursed himself for his own stupidity. Of course he would ask that, you dumbass. Having more than one power is unheard of. He snarled to himself before making such a stupid mistake before trying to clear his head. I can worry about that later. Right now I've got bigger problems. Excuse me, I asked you a question. Hatchin said, however the only response he got was an 20% of a punch, sending the octopus fishmen through the wall and into unconsciousness. Sorry Hatchin. He thought before noticing 2 more figures appear. One was muscular, blue skin and had lips. He had a Arlong tattoo on his right shoulder. He was wearing a necklace, striped blue vest, dark brown leather pants and sandals. Next to him was a manta ray fishman that wore a traditional martial artist with a dark blue GI, black belt and his hair tied up in a ponytail. This was Chu and Karubi. I can't believe some worthless human was able to take down so many of our brothers. Though he seemingly has managed to eat 2 devil fruits, so I guess miracles can happen. Chu said, staring lazy at Izuku. Doesn't matter, this ends now. Karubi declared, glaring at the team before rushing forward to attack. 100-tile true punch. He declared his attack, hitting Izuku right in the cheek, with the manta ray fishman grinned, waiting to see this scum's head fly clean off his body. Only for that to never happen as pain exploded in Karubi's fist, causing him to clutch his hand and look at the human, only for his eyes to widen when he saw black shine exactly where he had punched him. Haki too? He questioned himself, only to notice Izuku's palm extended and pointed towards him. Anything else? The team questioned, getting nothing but stunned silence in return. Didn't think so. Izuku revealed before Karubi was engulfed in lighting and fell to the ground unconscious when the attack ended. Izuku stared at the martial artist before slowly turning to a shaking Chu. Whether he was shaking from fear or anger, Izuku didn't know. So you next? He asked simply, and this seemed to strike a nerve as Chu managed to stop shaking and took a step forward. You're damn right I am next, and don't think I'll go down as easy as the... He didn't get any further as he was cut down thanks to a storm leg from Izuku getting out one last week. Chu. Before joining his brothers in unconsciousness. Seeing Chu go down, Izuku finally allowed himself to breathe as he moved his way to Arlong's castle. Izuku knew he really shouldn't be doing this, that because of his actions he could throw so many things into danger, but he couldn't help it. Arlong was a monster and Izuku was there and easily had the strength to stop him, and with those factors in mind he could just walk away. Finally he arrived right at the base of the building. Well, in for a penny, in for a pound. He muttered to himself as he raised his index finger, electricity gathering around it before he jerked it down, causing a massive lighting bulb to strike the building, instantly setting it aflame. It was silent for a few minutes as Izuku watched the fire destroy the building, and it had just collapsed when he heard a low animalistic growl from behind him. You bastard! Turning back he watched calmly as Arlong stumbled to his feet, his injuries and anger making it hard for him to get his footing. Do you have any idea of what you cost me? At Izuku's silence the fishman seemed to have lost the last of his patience. 10 years. 10 long years of money collecting wasted. Arlong roared, causing Izuku's eyes to widen. It was only supposed to be 8 years, so why is he saying 10? But the absolute worst thing you cost me were my maps. Maps I was going to use to take over the East Blue. He roared in absolute fury. All that work my mapmaker did. Wasted. He snarled, giving Izuku a truly animalistic glare. I hope you're happy, boy, because after I kill you I'm going to go get my map maker and kill everyone in that precious village of hers, he declared, truly losing all sense, never noticing Izuku's ice-cold look. Then I guess I have to make sure you never move again, he declared before slowly walking towards the pirate captain, using one of his size-based devil fruit to grow to 10 feet until he was right in front of him. Another one? Arlong questioned, having heard his brothers shout something about the human having multiple devil fruits before passing out. Izuku didn't say a word as he grabbed Arlong's shoulders and began to push down, causing Arlong to fall to his knees as Izuku kept pushing. It was then that Arlong knew what Izuku was trying to do. He's trying to break my spine, the fishman though in horror. Hey, we can talk about this. You look like a reasonable man. We can work something out. We can be partners. He tried as he gripped Izuku's arm to try and remove them, only for Izuku to keep pushing as Arlong could feel his spine getting to the literal breaking point. Please, I'm sorry. I'll stop the killings. Stop the taxes. I'll leave and never come back. He pleaded, all pride and anger completely gone and now replaced with the desire to just being able to get out of this alive. Crack! Arlong's arms fell limp and his eyes rolled into the back of his head as his spine shattered, while Izuku finally let go, allowing Arlong to fall limp, likely never being able to never walk again. Izuku did nothing but stare at the broken pirate in front of him, a million thoughts going through his head now, especially the 2-year difference in the timeline. Finally he sighed before dusting himself off before standing up and turning around, only to come face to face with the residents of Kokoyashi village, who seemed to be in a trance at what they were seeing. The fishmen who had killed, pillaged and terrorized their islands for the last decade were laying sprawled and defeated. Their headquarters lay in ruin and Arlong had been reduced to sobbing, begging mess before being crippled for life. This is really happening, right? This isn't some cruel joke, right? Or a mass hallucination everyone's having, right? An older pleaded rather desperately. He was an elderly man with wrinkles, gray hair, gray eyebrows and a gray mustache and goatee. He wears a bandana with a red cross and sunglasses. He wore a striped light green and dark green shirt, under a doctor's coat with a red cross on the right sleeve. I think it is Neko, a man said shakily besides him. He was a man covered in scars and had a mustache. He was wearing a short-sleeved police uniform and short pants with a pinwheel on top of his hat. At this, the other villagers seemed to finally come out their stupor as grins slowly but surely appeared on their faces as they were able to finally accept what they were seeing. Arlong Park is gone. The fishmen have defeated. Free. The villagers shouted, tears in their eyes at the fact their nightmare was finally over. Is it true? Have they really been defeated? A voice questioned hesitantly but brimming with hope as 2 women approached. The first was an average-sized woman with light blue hair and tanned skin, and her right arm and chest were heavily tattooed. She had a beige sleeveless shirt with blue trousers and purple sandals. She also appeared to wear pink lip gloss. However, it was the second woman that instantly stood out to him, as he had seen her many times through many perspectives, and although she's older than she should be, he would know her anywhere. Nami, he thought as he gazed upon the cat burglar herself. Nami meanwhile was soaking in everything that she was seeing as she looked at the seemingly invisible fishmen lay defeated seemingly by one person. Slowly she approached Izuku, who was looking at her weirdly. Probably noticed the Arlong tattoo. She reasoned in her mind as she continued to approach him until she was standing right in front of him. You're the one who beat the fishmen, right? She questioned, with Izuku nodding to confirm it. She turned to the villagers and they simply nodded, except the blue-haired woman, who turned away to hide her tears. I see then, Nami whispered quietly. In that case. Izuku got no warning as he soon found himself in a tight embrace, and when he looked down he saw her face flooded with tears. Thank you. She cried with everything she had, only tightening the embrace. This seemed to be the relight, the joy in everyone's heart, as their cheers and tears returned tenfold as the islanders either ran to spread the word, hugged either other, or ran to hug their savior. Izuku wanted to say that wasn't necessary, but he didn't want to ruin the mood, so he quickly created clones to gather, detain and hold the fishmen until they could be handed over to Marines. Proper Marines, Izuku noted as he was led of the villagers, Nami never leaving his side. Line break. In all honesty, Izuku could tell you what happened the next 3 days as he wandered around Kokoyashi village eating, sleeping and meeting and be thanked from everyone on the Konami Islands. Izuku also had a lot of time to think of what to do about finding a way to get back home. His first thought was to actually go and try to find Dr. Vegapunk, the leading scientist of the world, and see if he could help get Izuku home. However, that did have risks and problems of their own. The first being he actually would have to find the scientist. Now one would think that with the memories of every devil fruit user from the world, Izuku would be able to find the scientist. However, the memories also proved Vegapunk moved a lot, not to mention Izuku was still uneasy about the 2-year. Call it being paranoid, but if that's different, then who knows what else is different. The next problem would be the government itself. Izuku was pretty sure that if he could find Vegapunk, he could strike a deal with him, such as letting the scientist run a few tests on him in exchange for his help. However, the problem would be keeping it from the government, who not only would disapprove and try to shut it down, but also try and capture Izuku, not only for having access to all devil fruits but also have knowledge they'd do everything they can to keep quiet. It was when someone cleared their throats did Izuku realize he had been spacing out, and with a turn of his head he saw it was Nami, who he hadn't seen since the party started. "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" she requested, getting a nod from the teen as she began to lead him out of the village. "So are the fishmen giving your clones any trouble?" she asked. "No, whenever they wake up and try and break out, my clones just knock them out again," he explained, getting a nod from the navigator before another hit her, causing her to look back at him as they walked. "What about Hatchin? I mean the octopus fishman," she clarified when she thought he would be confused. Izuku sighed sadly with a shake of his head. "He's woken up and just keeps crying, constantly muttering things like, 'I'm sorry,' and 'Why did I let this happen?'" Under his breath, the green-haired teen explained, causing Nami to stop and look down as she gripped her arm where her new tattoo had replaced her Arlong tattoo. "Listen, can you just let him go?" Now this surprised Izuku, and it must have shown on his face. Hatchin wasn't like the others. He might have acted like he hated humans, but it became clear after a while that wasn't the case at all. She explained before looking at him. There were even times he helped people pay their survival tax. He couldn't do it often, of course, but he did when he could. Another change, Izuku noted while creating a clone and telling it to go release Hatchin and kick him off the island before they continued on their way, before finally arriving at Nami's and her sister Najiko's house, and was surprised not only to see the blue-haired woman but also Genzo and Neko, who grinned upon seeing him. "Hey, sorry to call you up here, but there are some things we want to talk about," Najiko greeted while the two men nodded before the group headed into the house before they sat around the table. "First of, I know you've probably heard hundreds of times by now, but I gotta say it again. Thank you for setting us free. We've been living in nothing short of hell for the last decade, and the thought of actually being free now is still settling in," Genzo revealed, getting nods from the others. "Though we do have a few questions if you don't mind answering," Najiko requested, getting a silent nod from Izuku, knowing this was coming and hoping they didn't ask too many tough questions. Seeing this, the group started. "Okay, first off, where are you doing here? It's obvious from your strength you can prosper in the Grand Line, so why waste your time in the East Blue?" Najiko asked, shattering Izuku's hope of no hard questions. It didn't get any easier with Neko's questions. "And what about your multiple powers? Up until now we thought devil fruits were just a myth, but now they're clearly not. And if they're real, then how do you have more than one?" Neko questioned, and Izuku was seriously struggling with what to say. However, it was Genzo's question that broke the camel's back. "What are you going to do now?" Izuku was silent as he clutched his hands tightly, wondering what exactly how to answer that question before taking a deep breath. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, he thought before looking at them all in the eyes. "All right, but it's a long story." With that, Izuku told them everything, from the world he was born in, his quirk, the memories, growing up fighting in the battle tower, and the events that led him to this point, having de-iced to lay everything on the table. Naturally this was met with shock and skepticism, but thanks to items from his castle and memories, thanks to his memo fruit, leaving the group stunned. "That's a lot to take in," Genzo said, breaking the silence, with Neko nodding in agreement while making a mental note to give the boy a medical exam later. Najiko and Nami meanwhile were silent. Najiko, while feeling bad for Izuku, couldn't help but be grateful for the situation he found himself in. She knew that there was chance Izuku might be stuck here for the rest of his life, but after years of fearing for the lives of the people living on the Konami Islands and her sister living as a slave, she was ready for any help regardless of what it meant for others. Nami was having similar thoughts but held much more guilt as she recalled all the innocent people she threw to the wolves when she was escaping from pirates. How many times and she set some random civilian up as her boss and left them to deal with enraged pirates? How many people, cities, families were ruined because of her? She kept saying it was for the good of her people, but it was just an excuse. She constantly told herself she was better than pirates because she only stole from pirates, but with everything she did she was no better than they were. As for what I'm going to do now, Izuku said, addressing the one question he never answered. I guess I'll travel the world looking for a way home. He answered. By yourself? Genzo asked with a raised eyebrow, getting a shrug from Izuku. Maybe, I could form a crew. I have to will be picky for who I chose, considering the government might give me a bounty if and when they learn about me. Izuku explained, getting nods from Najiko, Neko and Genzo. None of them noticed Nami tense. Suddenly Izuku's eyes went wide as he shot out of his seat, starting the others. What is it, Izuku? Genzo asked, getting a scowl from Izuku, who had gotten the memories from his clones, and said a simple word. Marines. Line break. Che. This place has sure seen some better days. A rather unremarkable man with a rat-like face laughed as he looked around the remains of Arlong Park. Captain Nezumi, what should we do now, sir? One Marine grunted, questioned, which caused Nezumi's smirk to widen. Search for anything valuable and claim it. After that we'll go see that Nami girl Arlong told us about. Apparently she has 95 million berries that she stole from others saved up, and it's our duties as Marines to confiscate it. Nezu said with a slimy smirk, and would have continued if not for a bowstaff smashing into his face courtesy of an enraged Nami. Don't you dare touch that money. It's to help Kokoyashi village. The tangerine-loving girl yelled at him as Nezumi's men aimed their guns at her, only for an OFA-powered Izuku to smash into them, breaking guns and bones alike, while Najiko, Genzo and Neko watched in the background, ready to get involved if needed. Nezumi meanwhile was clutching his face in pain. His nose was clearly broken and several of his teeth had been knocked out as blood trailed down his lips. Who the hell do you think you are, you little bitch? Do you have any idea who I am? Well, do you? Only for Nami to slam her foot down on his stomach, causing him to yell in pain as the girl glared at him. Yeah, I know you. You're the corrupt Marine that was in league with Arlong and let the people of the Konami Islands suffer. Nami revealed, screaming by the end, to which the rat Marine just scoffed. And who the hell cares about a few backwater islands? Huh, it's not like you have anything to truly live for. So what if a few of the locals died? It's no real loss. Nezu shouted, and that seemed to be the final straw for the navigator, who slammed her bowstaff down on his head, knocking him out. Izuku watched Nami take a few deep breaths before calming down and turning to Izuku. Hey, you were planning on leaving soon, right? She questioned, getting a nod from Izuku, to which Nami grinned. Then take me with you, she requested, getting wide-eyed from the three men, while Najiko just smiled like she was expecting this. Nami, what are you saying? You're finally free. You can do whatever you want now. Why do you want to leave so suddenly? Genzo said, with Nami's grin widening. Exactly. Now I can finally chase my dream. To travel the world and draw a map of it, she revealed as she walked over to Izuku and hooked his arm between hers. And who better to travel with than the guy who saved us? She asked. At this, Najiko couldn't help a sly grin appear on her face. Oh Nami, how bold. Traveling with a guy 5 years younger than you. Why? What would Belmere think? She asked in a mock surprised tone. Hearing this, a huge blush appeared on Nami's face. Shut up. She shouted at her sister, who laughed along with Neko, while Genzo just gasped, not believing what he just heard. Izuku for his part just coughed and turned his head away. He wasn't against what the idea of dating Nami, and he did like older women. Him dating Amanda was proof of that, and he knew she was planning on getting him a harem. Holy shit. Izuku suddenly thought, his eyes going wide. Amanda. There is an Amanda in this world too. The thought hadn't occurred to him but until then. Deciding he could deal with that train of thought later, Izuku turned his attention back to Nami, who looked ready to spit fire at her sister and the doctor before noticing he was looking at her. Are you sure? There's a good chance we will become enemies of the world government, and I'm not even sure there's a way to get home. We could be doing this for nothing. Nami just smiled confidently. Yeah, I'm sure. Like I said, I'm doing this for my dream too. She said before pointing at the marine cruiser that the Marines brought. Besides, we even have our ship anyway, she said cheerfully, getting a smirk from Izuku, who looked it over. It was a standard Nami transport ship, but it should get the job done. It's a good ship, though let's change things up a bit. Izuku said, placing his hands on it and activated the art fruit covering the ship in a thought cloud. When the cloud disappeared, they could see there were some changes to the ship. The most noticeable was the colors, which had once been the standard marine colors, had been replaced by dark browns, reds and yellows. The figurehead, which had once been a single pole, had become spear-like, and the marine emblems on the sails and flag had been wiped clean. "I'll have some clones look over the ship and see what we need," he explained before looking at the marines. "As for them, I'll put them with the fishmen until tomorrow," he explained, with the 4 Kokoyashi natives growing tomorrow. "Why tomorrow?" Najiko asked, getting a smirk from the fighting champion. "Because tomorrow Nami and I will be paying the Rats Marine Base a visit. I mean, it's going to be a long journey, and I'm sure the Marines wouldn't mind if we liberated some of their supplies," Izuku finished. Normally Izuku wouldn't even think about anything like this, but if he's going to survive in this world, he would have to set certain morals aside. Nami soon had a smirk matching Izuku. "Oh, I like the way you think, Captain," she said. The group soon left, leaving behind the clones to do their jobs. However, during this they missed a radio broadcast over on of the Den Mushis. "Attention all ships. The Pirate Empress is no longer a warlord. Repeat, Boa Hancock has been stripped of her warlord statues. Line break." "Well, this is it. You ready?" Nami asked Izuku as the two were just outside the 16th Navy branch of the East Blue. The two had left early in the morning, not wanting to make a big fuss of it, but it didn't go so well as everyone in Kokoyashi had come to see Nami off. Izuku meanwhile had nodded with a smirk as he took in her appearance. She had on a pink short-sleeved shirt, yellow skirt and brown boots, while Izuku himself wore a dark blue shirt, green cargo pants and black combat boots. Seeing her younger captain nod, she smirked. "And our guest, are they comfortable?" she asked, getting a smirk. Izuku opening a hatch on his stomach, revealing the fishmen and corrupt marines beaten, bloody and chained up. "Perfect," the navigator said as the hatch closed, as 2 clones appeared next to Nami to help her for her part of the plan. Nami would be responsible for stealing everything not nailed down, from food, weapons, medical supplies and most importunity money, with the clones responsible for dealing with any marines who got in their way and carrying whatever they stole. After that, one of the clones would split from the group and head to the communication and surveillance room to delete any evidence they were ever there. Izuku's part was much more simple. When Nami and the clones were causing chaos, he would be heading straight towards Nozumi's office and strip it of anything valuable. However, the most important thing he had to do was contact Marine headquarters and inform them of everything that happened. "Well then," Izuku said, cracking his neck before pulling his fist back and coating it in flames. "Showtime," he said before launching a massive fire fist at the building. Immediately screams and alarms filled the air as Izuku and Nami glanced at each other before nodding and rushing into the building and taking down any marines that got in their way. Neither of them noticed a figure watching them as they silently shuffled a deck of cards. Line break. It took little time for Izuku to find the Rat's office. The fact that the Marines were screaming about guarding it from the invaders helped too. They didn't last long either, as Izuku used a mochi gatling to knock them all out before busting down the door. The inside of the room was pretty standard, though Izuku knew there had to be more, which is why he quickly started tearing the room apart. What he found was invaluable. There was money, all right, but there were also charts, maps, and most importantly evidence that would prove Nozumi's guilt, such as documents detailing his deals with Arlong, how many people have been killed by Arlong and how much Arlong pays him every month. "Now for the fun part," Izuku said with a smirk before walking over to the Den Mushi, and after finding the number for Marine Ford and called them. The snail instantly changed as someone picked up, looking for mature, and actually grew a handlebar mustache. "This is Vice Admiral Stainless. Who am I speaking to, and what is the reason for your call, soldier?" the now named Stainless asked. "Vice Admiral Stainless, I have some important matters to discuss with you. As for who I am, well, I'm the guy currently invading this base greater than," Izuku finished with a smirk as the snail showed clear signs of anger and confusion. "And just who the hell are you to invade a Marine base?" the Vice Admiral demanded, as Izuku had put the incriminating evidence into a fax to send to the Vice Admiral. "That's not important. What is important is what I'm sending you now," Izuku responded as the info was sent, getting him from the Navy man before he read it over. It was silent for a few minutes as the Vice Admiral read the documents over, and it sure seemed to be having an effect, as the snail kept looking more sick as the minutes went by, until finally he spoke. "The criminals, are they all still alive?" he asked, and Izuku had to stop himself from asking, "Which ones?" "Yes, all of them are still alive, including the ones in this base." "I don't kill, that's not I do things," he revealed while the mustached Vice Admiral sighed in relief. "Thank God. Listen, I know I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm glad you took down these Marines, they were a stain on the world government." Stainless said, to which Izuku just shrugged. "It's no problem after all." Here Izuku took a deep breath as he prepared for what he was about to say, something both he and Nami agreed to call themselves, so which a determination in his eyes. Izuku finished. "Pirates and Marines should be chasing each other," Izuku said, commenting to his new role. Stainless didn't seem that surprised, but if the twitching eye and the ugly look on the snail's face, Izuku would bet Stainless didn't like what he heard. "You're a pirate?" he asked after a moment, sounding like he was hoping Izuku would say no. Izuku was only too happy to end this hope. "Yup. That was it, no turning back," Stainless sighed as before, speaking again. "Very well then, except no mercy for Marines, we will catch you just like any other pirate." Here Izuku smirked. "Best of luck," he said simply, and would have hung up had Stainless not asked one thing. "Just who are you? Just tell me your name." Izuku was silent. There was something he wanted to say, but it would be so cliché. "Oh, screw it. The setup's too perfect. Who I am? Well, that's pretty simple," he said with a grin. "I'm the man who's going to be king of the pirates." Line break. "Well, someone was successful," Izuku muttered dryly as he saw Nami cradling one of the sacks of money while he and his clones watched with a sweat drop. "You better believe I was," she said before going back to snuggling the money. 40 million berries, 40 million. That's 20 million each," she cheered while the clone just picked up the bundle, Nami and all, leaving the base with ease as the Marines had either been knocked out or had fled. It was when they had just left the building when a new steady, calm and deep voice spoke up. "An impressive display. Fate truly blessed you today," it said as a man appeared out of the shadows. Basil Hawkins. What the hell is he doing in the East Blue? Wondering what the North Blue pirate doing here, mentally ordering his clones to guard Nami, who seemed a little freaked out by the soon-to-be supernova. "Glad you enjoyed the show, but I've got a couple of questions. Who are you, why are you here, and why were you watching us?" Izuku asked, putting on the air that he didn't know the magician. Hawkins bowed his head slightly. "Apologies, I am Basil Hawkins, a native from the North Blue." Hawkins introduced himself, getting a nod from Izuku. "Midoriya." "Izuku Midoriya," he introduced himself before gesturing to Nami. "That's Nami," he introduced, with Nami raising her hand slightly hesitantly. Izuku, seeing this, decided to get to the matter at hand. "So what exactly do you want, Hawkins?" "We kinda need to get out of here before more Marines start showing up," Izuku said, not wasting any more time. Basil nodded, accepting this. "Very well, to put it bluntly, I believe fate has led me here for a reason. So please allow me to join your crew," the magician requested. "What?" Izuku stood dumbfounded as he stared at Hawkins, wondering how he should respond to the man's request. Normally one wouldn't think twice about accepting the request of someone so powerful, but if there's one thing Izuku learned from all the memories of previous devil fruit users and growing in the battle tower, he's learned to trust people so blindly. Izuku turned his head to Nami, who was frantically shaking her head no before turning back to the man who was waiting patiently for an answer. "Why?" Izuku finally said, choosing to use the blonde man's reason to decide. In response, the man took out a deck of cards. "Fate instructed me. I want to find my destiny," Basil explained, getting a confused look from Nami. "And you think you'll find it traveling with us?" she questioned, getting a nod to the lanky man. "Indeed, though there is another reason why I want to travel with you," Basil revealed. "Believe it or not, I am a fortune teller and I use these cards to help with my predictions," Hawkins explained, placing the cards in the air only for them to be held in the air by strands appearing out of them, air creeping Nami out a bit. "You what are those?" she questioned while pointing at the strands, causing Basil to look up at them before turning to her. "They're straw. I ate the straw fruit and became a straw man," Hawkins explained briefly before turning back to his cards. "Like I said, I use these cards to see what fate has in store so I can prepare accordingly. Which leads us to me coming here. A few months ago I was planning on heading out as the captain of my own crew. Fate had given me a high percentage of success, so it seemed logical to what I should do," he explained before looking up at Izuku. "That is until something strange happened." he said, getting confused looks from the pair and the clones. What happened? Nami couldn't help but ask. I couldn't get a proper reading. He revealed. Ever since I started this path I have always been able to get readings to determine chance of success or failure. Except for this one time. I couldn't understand what happened the day I was supposed to set out to sea. I did one last reading to make sure everything was as it should be. He said before shaking his head. Nothing. No matter what I did I could get any consistent reading. I always jumping back and forth. I cancelled my plans to look into this only for this to continue for several months. It was absolutely maddening. Hawkins said, though the way he kept his voice monotone you'd have a hard time believing it. And then one day a few weeks ago I got my first proper reading since this began. It said if I truly wanted to find my destiny I would need to head east and find those who would help me find it. Basil finished his tale as Nami looked at Hawkins a little skeptical. And you think Izuku is the one to do that? She asked, her tone filled with more than a little suspicion. Hawkins nodded as he looked at the navigator. I do. He said simply before turning back to Izuku. I ask again, may I please join your crew? He requested to Izuku, who after a few moments nodded, causing the magician to bow his head. Thank you. No problem, now we need to get moving. The Marines will be here in a minute. Izuku instructed, taking all the stolen goods inside his body using the castle fruit as he and his now-to crewmates left the area and before long the island. Line break. It had been a few days since the assault on the 16th branch and Hawkins joined the crew. Hawkins himself had fit in rather well to the crew, having made himself at home in the men's cabin, which Nami was thankful for was on the opposite side of the women's cabin. Izuku offered her the captain's room, but she turned it down, stating that since Izuku was captain he should get it. Besides, she just knew that when, not if but when they gained another female on the crew, they would just be constantly fighting over it. Right now Hawkins and Nami were playing cards on the deck of the ship while Izuku was in the kitchen preparing lunch, having taken up the job of cook until they could find a proper chief. Back with Nami and Hawkins, Nami was getting frustrated. Out of the 10 hands they've played she's only won 2 out of 10 of them. She hadn't had a losing streak this bad in years, the only silver lining being they weren't betting anything. Luckily that's about to change, she thought while mentally smirking. Pair of kings, Nami said, laying down her cards before crossing her arms triumphantly. Aces, Hawkins says, simply laying down his cards on the table only for them to scatter as the navigator slammed her hand down on the table in frustration. Son of a. Boom boom boom, explosions from the water instantly rocked the boat, causing Nami and Hawkins to hold on to avoid falling. What the hell is going on out here? Izuku demanded as he ran from the kitchen. No idea. We were just setting her and suddenly the explosions started. Nami screamed over the explosions. I believe I have found the source, Hawkins said, as calm as ever, something Nami noticed. How the hell can you be so calm about all this? She demanded, looking ready to deck the fortune teller who didn't even blink. Because I do not see the shadow of death over any one of us today, he answered calmly, and Nami surprisingly calmed down, having learned to trust the blonde-haired man when it came to this time of thing. Still though, we need to be cautious, this could get tricky, Izuku said as he and his crew looked at the source. The first noticeable thing was the fact there was an actual plesiosaur. It was actually quite similar to its counterpart from Izuku's world, with a humped body, 4 flippers, and a long flexible neck. Its jaw alone looked large enough to swallow a human being whole. The most eye-catching thing about the beast, however, was the fact that it wore a plated kabuto helmet embezzled with a Jolly Roger that resembled a crew. However, the thing that truly caught the group's attention was what the beast was pulling. The thing was a massive, complex warship, with the most eye-catching thing was the giant cannon with what looked like 3 golden dragons wrapped around the top of it. The sails were adorned with the same Jolly Roger that was on the plesiosaur's helmet. Izuku stared at the Jolly Roger in confusion. He knew he had seen it before from memories, he just couldn't place it. Well, what do we have here? It would seem some pound scum has gotten itself in our way. A voice called from the ship as a figure came into view. It was a normal-sized man who was wearing what looked like crab-like armor on his back. The armor was attached with shoulder gauntlets with large crab claws. He was also wearing a red shirt, blue pants and a blue cape. He had purple hair tied into a ponytail and a purple beard. He had a red ring around each of his eyes and an X-shaped scar on his left temple. He also wears a black pirate hat with the same Jolly Roger on it. Damn it, I still can't place him. Izuku thought with narrowed eyes, sure he had seen the man in someone's memories before. Nami and Hawkins both shared confused looks, well confused for Hawkins anyway. "Ah, who are you?" Nami asked, confused, her fear complete gone at seeing the generic pirate captain in front of her. The pirate captain's face meanwhile reddened in both anger and embarrassment. "Are you telling me you lowlifes have never heard of the pirate shogun Ganzak?" The now named Ganzak roared at them as Izuku snapped his fingers. "Oh yeah, he was the crab guy Luffy beat up when he was just starting out." Izuku remembered before narrowing his eyes in confusion. But wait, does that mean he already destroyed the island where it was made? Izuku questioned before speaking up. "Hey Gaznak, where did you get that ship?" Izuku shouted, causing the purple-haired pirate to scowl at the lack of respect before grinning smugly. "Jealous. Of course you are, who wouldn't be of a masterpiece like this? Well, when you have as deep connections in the black market as I do, things like this are easy to get," he boasted while Izuku noted the new change. Gaznak then stopped laughing before grinning murderously down at the trio. "Now then, on to business," he announced, his crew appearing behind him as Hawkins drew his sword and Nami her bow staff. "Now then men, kill the 2 men down there and bring me the woman. I am sure we can get a good price for her," Gaznak ordered as his men shouted and were ready to charge with the plesiosaur barreling down at them. Shinck. Only for it to soon be without its head, which fell into the depths of the ocean with the neck failing down into the water, blood pouring out of the wound and coloring the ocean red. Gaznak and his crew stared shock, their eyes bugging out of their heads at what they just saw as Hawkins calmly flung the blood off his sword while Izuku grinned. "Good work, Hawkins. Now you and Nami stay back, defend the ship. I'll be back soon," he told them, getting nods from the pair before he jumped high into the air and slamming down onto the deck of the ship before being surrounded by Gaznak and his men, who were shaking with rage. "You bastard, who do you think you are?" one of the goons shouted as he rushed forward trying to cut him down, only for Izuku to slam his fist into the pirate's cheek, sending him flying off the into ocean. The rest of the Gaznak's crew looked scared now, seeing the strength Izuku had, and even Gaznak looked somewhat nervous before steeling himself. "What are you fools waiting for? They are only 3 people, forget about leaving the woman, just kill them all already. They can't beat all of us." A couple minutes later, however, Gaznak wasn't so sure. Most of his crew were either knocked out or had tried to swim away as he stared at the uncurious or groaning remains of his crew, while the trio had all boarded his ship with Izuku regrouping with his crew. "You guys okay?" he asked, getting nods from Nami and Hawkins. "Yeah." After Hawkins took care of the plesiosaur, the rest were nothing but common thugs, she revealed, with Hawkins nodding in agreement. The men that had boarded their ship were down within seconds. He didn't even have time to make any of his dolls. By the point, Gaznak was complete red while shaking with rage. "You worthless maggots," the purple-haired man roared, activating his crab armor, revealing blades and guns pointed at the group. "All my hard work, and you think you can just come and ruin it all? Not on your life. Now prepare your arc." He was cut off by Izuku, who fired off a storm leg and hit him dead center in the chest, causing him to fall to the ground unconscious as blood gushed from the wound. Seeing him down and not getting up anytime, so Izuku turned to his crew. "So who wants to raid the place?" Instantly Nami's eyes turned to belly size. "Now you're taking." She ran off with Izuku and Hawkins behind her, confident she would be getting her hands on a tons of treasure by the end of the day. Line break. "How long do you think she will be like this?" Izuku said as he and Hawkins watched Nami sulk in the corner of the ship, depressed. Turns out the ship was completely devoid of any kind of treasure and she was now in a bit of a funk. "There is a 90% change our navigator will stop her sulking within 2 minutes. Hawkins read, confused on how such a thing was possible. Hearing this, Izuku raised an eyebrow, but before he could question it, something in the corner of his eyes caught his attention. Something was rapidly approaching their ship. As it neared the ship, Izuku was able to make out that it was a small rowboat with what looked like 3 men rowing as fast as they can. However, the 2 men had no times to question what they were running away from as they passed Izuku's ship in an instant, leaving the pair confused. "Hey," Nami said, suddenly getting up with a confused expression. "Does anyone else smell smoke?" she asked, getting Izuku and Hawkins to sniff the air, and sure enough, the smell of sulfur was there. "I am going to take a look from above," he told them, raising up in the air, getting a raised eyebrow from Hawkins. He knew his captain could use multiple devil fruits, even his own, but he wasn't told how yet. He wasn't angry though, since the cards told him there was a 100% chance that he would find out eventually. The question is when, he asked himself before going back to his cards and raising his eyebrow at what he saw. Nami meanwhile looked on concerned, and it only got worse when she saw Izuku come back down with a troubled expression. "Well, Izuku?" she asked hesitantly as Izuku sighed and pointed towards the direction the other boat was coming from. "There's an entire island on fire about 10 miles that way," he told her, causing her to eek in fear. "Then I say we steer well clear of it. It's too much for us at the moment," Nami said, though a part of her knew it was mostly her that wasn't ready. "Actually, I think it would as well to go towards that island," Hawkins advised, standing up and walking towards the pair with Nami quick to question this. "And why would we do that?" she partially screamed at the blonde man. "Because there is a 77% chance that we will recruit new crew members if we do," Hawkins said calmly. This surprised both Izuku and Nami. "Well, that's good enough for me," Izuku said, wondering just who it could be, while Nami slumped in defeat. "Fine," she whined as Izuku headed for the wheel. "But if it's too dangerous, we leave immediately, got it?" Quote. She questioned, though she doubted Izuku heard her. She was about to leave when she felt Hawkins' hand on her shoulder, and she was surprised to see understanding in his eyes when she turned. "Despite what you may believe, both me and Izuku know what you're feeling. That you can't keep up with us, that you're slowing us down in battle, and that you can't fight on your own when it comes to stronger opponents," Hawkins revealed as Nami looked down depressed. Truth be told, she had felt like that. Years of stealing and running has not helped her fighting ablates that much. True, she could easily hold her own against the common East Blue thug, but she knew that wasn't going to cut it. Izuku intended to head for the Grand Line, a place where a single person could wipe out an entire crew from any of the 4 blues was common. She knew right now she didn't have a place among those monsters, and she desperately wanted to change that. As if reading her mind, Hawkins spoke up again. "Fear not, fate has declared you will get stronger, though I do not know how. So hold your head high, you already stand shoulder to shoulder with the captain and myself, and soon you'll be fighting shoulder to shoulder with us too." With that he walked away, and Nami stared at him stunned for a moment before wiping her eyes with a small smile before running to join her crew. Line break. At last they had arrived, and as they looked around they were surprised by the damage and wreckage, or rather the lack thereof. True, the forest was on fire, but there was no screaming, no smell of blood, nothing. In fact, the only other noticeable thing was a small traveling ship docked there. "Well, Izuku, how's it looking?" she asked, having been told the basics of hockey along with Hawkins. "There are 2 people a little ways up the beach," Izuku said, getting nods from both Hawkins and Nami, with the navigator happy they won't have to fight an entire pirate crew again. That is until she heard what Izuku said next. "Though they are much stronger than the Marines, Gaznak, and even Arlong. Honestly, I'd say they were on Hawkins' level," Izuku told them, causing Nami to let out a tiny squeak of fear while Hawkins gained an interested look on his face. Suddenly Nami put on the best winning smile she could, though it was clearly forced, and she had beads of sweat on her face. "Hey guys, you know what, why don't we just leave? I mean, if they're as strong as Hawkins, then it'll be hard to believe they would want to join someone else. In fact, they probably already killed the guys could have possibly recruited. Right, Hawkins?" she asked, hoping she was right as Hawkins looked at his cards again. "The chance that we will recruit these 2 is 80%. It went up," Nami screamed in her mind, wondering how that was possible, not noticing Izuku smirk before picking her up bridal style and told Hawkins to grab his shoulder, which the man did, and soon lifted the 3 of them up in the air and onto the island with the float fruit. When they landed, Nami seemed to snap out of her funk, and with a huge blush on her face scrambled out of his arms and onto the beach, squeaking out a "thank you," before quickly to stand behind Hawkins. Seeing how his crew seemed to be ready, Izuku started walking towards the 2 energies he felt, his hockey on full alert to make sure they didn't go anywhere. They were just about to turn the corner where the 2 were when Nami suddenly tripped on something and started to fall, though Hawkins caught her before she could truly fall. "Are you all right?" he asked, getting a nod and thank you from the navigator before curiosity got the better and wondered what she had tripped on. Though once she cleared away the sand she couldn't hold in a scream of surprise. It was a man, or at least the remains of one. He was a dark-skinned, red-haired man that resembled a lion. He had broken shoulder pads made of gold, a torn white shirt and broken golden claws that had covered his normal ones. His injuries were incredibly severe. It looks like he had bathed in blood mixing together with sand and coercing his body. Giant holes like he had been impaled multiple times covered his body. His limbs twisted in several ways. Nami sat there frozen, not even trying to take the gold off, afraid to get any of the blood on her. Basil and Izuku just stared at the body. Izuku knew who this was. This was El Drago, a man who had eaten the scream fruit. He was a rather unremarkable pirate who was obsessed with gold, who had fought and beaten by Luffy. So the question is, who killed him? Izuku asked himself. The answer presented itself as the two who he had been sensing made themselves known. Well, looks like someone's found our handiwork. Look, the woman's so impressed she's speechless. A voice Izuku knew all too well laughed, while a sigh came from his companion. Honestly, it's one thing to kill someone, it's another to make jokes like that. A calm voice spoke, though it sounded muffled, and that's when the crew saw the two murderers. Eustass, Captain Kid and Massacre Solider, Killer. What the hell are they doing in the East Blue? He questioned before narrowing his eyes at them. And why the hell is there a possibility I can recruit them? Don't get him wrong, Izuku would diffidently take the two into his crew, both for their abilities and to keep them from causing trouble. The problem was that he knew how independent Kid was and knew he would never bend the knee to anyone, evident by with what happened with Kaido. Izuku's eyes widened as he remembered how a certain other crew of powerful and independent pirates was formed. That could diffidently work, all he needed to was get him to agree. Izuku really didn't need to come up with a plan for Killer. If he got Kid, Killer would naturally follow. Nami meanwhile had snapped out of her state of shock and glared at the red-haired man. How could you do this to someone, and then laugh about it? Quote. She demanded of him, not able to understand how he could laugh about this. It also didn't help the fact that she saw an overlap of Arlong laughing about her mother's death over him. What she didn't expect was for Kid to suddenly scowl. Of course I'm laughing, you bitch. Why wouldn't I? After this bastard killed my crew and severed my arm to steal a stupid treasure map, and I chased him from the South Blue, of course I would laugh after getting my revenge. Wouldn't you? He snarled at her, with Nami going wide-eyed at hearing this. The wanton need for revenge, that was something Nami could understand quite well. She knew what it felt like to want to absolutely kill someone. How many times did she try to kill Arlong only for it to end in miserable failure and for the fishmen to laugh as she got the crap beaten out of her as a punishment? Nami also knew that she would probably do the same if she had managed to kill Arlong. Seeing this, Kid managed to calm himself down. Normally he would have just killed the lot of them and be done with it, but he recognized the look on her face and knew she had experienced something similar. Kid scowled as he looked down at the corpse of the gold-loving pirate with a growl. It wasn't just the fact that the bastard had killed everyone bar him and Killer, it was also in the manner he did it. It was just after a hard-fought battle with another pirate crew. They were tired, wounded and in no shape to continue fighting. That's when El Drago appeared, launching one of those damn voice blasts, destroying most of the ship and killing most of the crew instantly or quickly drowning as they fell into the ocean. The only reason Kid was able to survive was because Killer had managed to pull him on to a piece of wreckage, but the explosion had blown his arm clear off. He watched with a burning hatred as the man sent in his 3 lackeys to retrieve whatever it was he was looking for. Turns out all they were after was one fucking map that was supposed to lead to a treasure in the East Blue. What it was doing in the South Blue Eustass didn't know, but at the moment he was too mad to care. The last thing he heard was the laughter from the bastard before passing out. When he came to, he was in an abounded sea cave with Killer treating his wounds the best he could with his entire left side bandaged up. He was momentarily confused before the memories started coming back, with them his rage. Telling Killer that as soon as he could walk they would be hunting the bastard down. Killer was in complete agreement. 4 days later, and with his new metal arm, Kid was ready, so they went into town, took down everyone who tried to stop them and stole a ship the two of them were able to man on their own. When they had finally arrived, tracked the man down, they caught him firing blast at the island, lighting it ablaze and raging about how some pirate lied to him about gold. He never saw the giant golem fist heading towards him. Kid took another deep breath, trying to get his nerves under control. Damn it, just thinking about it is pissing me off, he said, wishing there was something he could take this out on. Suddenly his eyes shoot towards Izuku, who was standing there with crossed arms, looking to be deep in thought. Or someone. Kid thought, a menacing grin etching its way onto his face. Oi musclehead, you look like you enjoy a good fight, he said, his grin widening when Izuku nodded before he pointed towards himself. Well then, why don't you try taking me on? He challenged, getting a raised eyebrow from Izuku. Well, that makes things simple, the teen thought before answering. Sure, but let's make things interested. Getting an interested look from Kid. How so? He asked. We put our lives on the line, with the life of the loser going to the winner to do with as they please, he suggested, getting shocked looks from Nami, Kid, an unknown to everyone killer. Hey, wait a minute. Nami tired to step forward, but Hawkins put his hand in front of her, causing the girl to look at him and see him shake his head before she to back to the two captains in time to see Kid snap out of his stupor and start to laugh. Well, you've certainly got some balls on you, don't you, brat? Fine, but don't start crying and begging when I've got you dead to rights, he threatened before turning around and started walking down the beach. Follow me, he instructed, not breaking his stride, with Izuku right behind him, and after a moment Nami, Killer and Hawkins followed. This is crazy. What's Izuku thinking? Nami said furiously, not believing what was happening. It was one thing to agree to fight, but to propose a death match. I can't believe Izuku is that kind of guy, Nami continued to rant. Besides, her killer nodded, not seeing the point of this. They had already got revenge, there was no need for any further fighting. Both were brought out of their thoughts by Hawkins. Who said anything about a death match? He questioned, getting both to stop and look at him. Weren't you listening, Scarecrow? Your captain proposed to pit their lives on the line, Killer argued, and to their surprise Hawkins nodded. Yes, and the winner gets to do whatever he wishes with the loser. That doesn't mean one has to die, Hawkins said before walking ahead, leaving behind two confused pirates. Doesn't have to die. Then what could Izuku? Nami muttered before her eyes widened in realization as she recalled what Hawkins told them on the boat. There is a 77% chance to find new cremates if we go to that island. So that's your plan, Izuku? Nami thought with a grin as she sped up to catch up with Hawkins, leaving Killer behind, confused. Eustass and Izuku had meanwhile reached their destination, and Izuku wasn't surprised by what he saw. It looks like a scrapyard, Izuku thought as he looked around and saw all the swords, guns, cannons and other broken metal lying around. Kid in the meantime had his arms spread out wide. Man, whenever I stand in the middle of scrap like this I can't help but think of home, he revealed before bringing his arms down. Now then, he whispered menacingly as he held up his right hand, purple lighting jetting from it before turning around suddenly to face Izuku. Let's get star. That was all he got out as Izuku's fist landed right in the side of his face, sending him flying several feet in the air and past the junk pile. Suddenly using shave, Izuku appeared right in the air right besides Kid, who had no time to react as Izuku kicked in the stomach, causing the red-haired man to plummet straight back down to the planet, where he landed with a thud and a groan. Kid glared up at his opponent, who was staying in the air thanks to Skywalk. Alright, that enough, Kid thought with a scowl as he got to his feet. Time to get serious. Raising his hand, Kid's magnetic power activated, causing dozens of swords to rise off the ground before flying towards Izuku with the intent to impale the teen. Though this proved to be useless as the swords passed harmlessly through Izuku thanks to the through fruit. Devil fruit powers, huh? Eustass thought with an annoyed scowl before having to jump out of the way to avoid a series of storm legs. Hey, how about you come down here and fight me like a man instead of running like a coward? Kid taunted Izuku, who smirked in reply. Alright, he simply said before disappearing from view. Kid looked around frantically, trying to figure out where the slippery bastard was coming from, when all of a sudden Izuku appeared right in front of him with a shave before unleashing a barrage of punches and kicks all over the magnetic manipulator before ending it with a hockey-powered punch, sending him flying into the ship he and Killer had arrived on. While this was going on, the others had arrived and were watching the fight proceed. That's the way, Izuku. Just a little more and he'll be finished. Nami cheered for her captain. As this was going on, Killer had to keep himself from shaking, wanting nothing more than to jump in and defend his captain and childhood friend. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. He respected Kid for too much to do get in the way during a fight. Besides, Kid would never accept his help. especially since the fight is his idea in the first place. You needn't worry, the shadow of death isn't upon either of them today. Hawkins spoke, suddenly startling Killer before looking at the magician questionably. As if feeling the masked pirate's eyes on him, Hawkins spoke again. Neither man will fall before sunset today, of that I am certain. With that the magician went silent again. Killer turned his attention back to the fight, hoping the straw man was right. Back with Izuku, he was trying to see any signs of Kid but just couldn't see him, and was about to head towards the ship himself when laughter emitted from it. I gotta say you're better than I expected, Kid admitted as he appeared from the ship, blood dripping from multiple wounds. But this is the end, he declared, raising his arm, purple lighting appearing on it as he did so. With that movement everything metal on the beach and ship started raising into the air. The bladed weapons mixed the scraps, forming giant spears and borders, while all the guns and cannons were all posed to fire. Well boy, any final words? He asked, with Izuku remaining silent before nodding. Yeah, I do. One in fact. He told the red-haired captain, who nodded. And that is? Izuku just raised his fingers and snapped. Rakery. In an instant all of Kid's weapons were vaporized in a flash of lighting. How though? He questioned before looking up and gasping. Those are thunderclouds, gasped Nami, staring up at the clouds as lighting dancing around them. When did he do this? She questioned, with Hawkins being the one to answer. Since we landed. He started off small so no one would notice, but once he saw everyone's attention was on the fight, he brought them in at a more rapid pace. Hawkins finished his explanation. Meanwhile Kid and Killer were beyond shocked at seeing the storm, not because of the storm itself but at the implications. The bastard has 2 devil fruits, Kid cried. How thought? He demanded angrily, trying to wrap his mind around this new situation. Wouldn't you like to know? A voice said from behind him, causing him to freeze before slowly turning around to see Izuku, who appeared out of nowhere, slam his fist into the redhead's face, causing him to fly back to island and fall just short of the burning trees, where he had time to react as Izuku slammed into him, his foot pinning the prospect arm while gripping Kid's neck with his right hand. Kid! Killer screamed, having seen enough and about to rush in. Kid's pride be damned when he found a blade at his neck. Just watch, Hawkins ordered in a tone that bore no argument. Kid meanwhile glared up at Izuku, who was watching with no emotions. What? Are you expecting me to cry or beg? Well, if so, go fuck yourselves. I am no beggar, so go ahead and kill me already, Kid screamed, refusing to look weak in front of his soon-to-be killer. What he didn't expect was for Izuku to laugh. Now why would I kill my new crew member? He asked rhetorically, getting shocked looks from Eustass and Kid. What? Both stammered out, causing Izuku to laugh harder. Why are you surprised? It's what we agreed on. Now hold on, Eustass said, a confused glare on his face as his temper started to rise again. We agreed on a deathmatch, Kid shouted, only causing Izuku to smirk. No, you said deathmatch. I said the loser's life would belong to the winner. Now since you lost, your life belongs to me, and I say you join my crew. Izuku reveled before turning to Killer. You can come along too if you want. After Izuku was done with his explanation, Kid was silent before he started to shake rapidly and violently. Hey Kid, are you? Killer couldn't finish his question though, as Kid couldn't hold it in anymore and let out the loudest laugh he ever had. He was laughing so hard he had to grip his stomach, all the while ignoring the pain he was feeling from the fight. Finally, after several minutes, Kid managed to gain control of his laughter, and after a few deep breaths he spoke again. You're on, crazy bastard, you know that? Putting your life at risk just for the chance to get new crewmates. Honestly. Kid finished with a smile and shake of his head. Fine, a deal's a deal. I'll join your crew, he promised before turning to Killer. What do you say, partner? He asked, with Killer simply nodding. Well, looks like our crew just grew, for better or worse, Nami muttered with an uneasy smile as Hawkins nodded, his predictions having once coming true. Izuku meanwhile was helping Kid to his feet. Sorry, but we don't have a doctor yet, so we can't exactly patch you up perfectly yet. Kid just waved off the apology. It's fine, I heal fast, and as long as we do our jobs right we won't need a doctor that much yet. Right? He questioned, getting a smirk in reply. Well. Kid sighed, dusting himself off. We might as well head towards your ship. I would say we should get some supplies from mine, but there's really nothing left. No problem, we've got plenty of everything, including dangerous weapons, Izuku said with a grin that Kid matched. It was just when they started walking that Killer spoke up. So what are we calling ourselves? When Kid was captain we just called ourselves the Kid Pirates. Killer asked, causing Nami and Hawkins to look at each other, not having discussed that before. So it came as a little surprise when Izuku provided an answer. I've actually been given that some thought and have finally came to an answer. He informed them, causing his now 4 crew members to listen and interested. And that would be? Kid questioned with Izuku smirking. The Devil King Pirates. It had been a couple of days since Kid and Killer joined the recently named Devil King Pirates, and things have been mixed. Killer melded into the crew while being respectful enough with Hawkins, accepting Izuku as his new captain and actually finding kinda of kindred spirit with Nami in trying to be the voices of reason for their other crew members. Kid was where things got a little complicated. He had indeed accepted Izuku with Killer, though he was dying to challenge him again, but it would have to wait until they found a doctor to patch him up. Kid and Nami also respected each other, though that didn't stop them from bickering with each other. Their tempers and personalities often causing them to argue. The problem came with Hawkins. Kid was honestly just a little disturbed by the magician. Call it paranoia, but when someone shows as little emotion as Hawkins, it's bound to stir some unease in the red-haired man. It didn't help the magician always seemed to have a comeback ready whenever Kid taunted him. Still, the two managed to stand each other and have conversations, so there was hope. However, Killer did bring up a good question when he asked what the name of the ship was, something that Izuku completely forgot about, but before he could think of something, Hawkins spoke up. Karen. He said simply. Named after the ferryman of the dead. Appropriate, don't you think? Hawkins would asked, and with that the Karen was named. It was a little after sunrise when Nami emerged from her room, stretching her arms as the sun hid her face. What a great morning, she said with a grin as she looked the sky and saw the weather was perfect while absent-mindedly taking in the smells from the kitchen. Well, I guess Izuku's up, she commented before spying a news coup and waving it down to get the paper. It was then the door to the men's quarters opened and Killer appeared without his helmet but his hair covering his eyes. Morning. He greeted with a yawn as he walked over to the navigator. Morning. She greeted back. How'd you sleep? Fine. He answered before an uneasy smile came to his face. Kid and Hawkins though. He trailed off as the two mentioned emerged for the cabin with the two looking annoyed. Well, Kid looked annoyed. It was hard to tell with Hawkins. Seeing this, Nami couldn't help but sweat drop. Okay, what happened there? She questioned with Killer sighing. Kid's annoyed that Hawkins kept him up late, and Hawkins annoyed due to the fact that Kid snored. The blonde explained, causing Nami to understand. It was then the four made their way to the kitchen where Izuku had just finished with breakfast. Honestly, Midoriya, we gotta find a full-time cook, Kid said, and while he found his captain's food delicious, he felt unless the entire crew was centered around cooking like the one led by Red-Legged Zeph, then the captain should be commanding, not cooking. Izuku nodded in understanding. Yeah, but where would we find someone like that? It's not like there's a ton of chefs ready to drop everything and become a pirate. Izuku argued, and aside from the Bharati, he couldn't think of anywhere where they could find a chef that would fit in well with the crew. Actually, Izuku, I may have our answer, Nami said with a grin as she read the paper before revealing it to the crew. 4 Blues Cooking Festival coming to East Blue. 4 Blues Cooking Festival? Izuku questioned, getting a raised eyebrow. Kid, you've never heard of it? It's pretty famous. The magnetic manipulator questioned, causing Nami and Izuku to grow nervous, having decided for the time being to keep Izuku's past a secret. Luckily, Kid moved on. Anyway, every year, an island is chosen to hold this big party that's all about food and cooking. It lasts a week and cooks from all over the world come and test their skills against each other. It goes in a big rational pattern of the 4 Blues every year, Kid explained with Killer nodding. Yeah, Kid and I were able to go to one a couple of years ago and it was fantastic. Plenty of talented cooks to choose from. In fact, that's the sole reason many pirates go. So they can recruit a chef. Killer continued, getting a surprised look from Nami. Wait, pirates can go to this? What about the Marines? Nami questioned, getting a shake from Killer. They don't usually bother. Most of the cooks there can fight as well as they can cook, and since most of the visitors are from the 4 Blues, there's not really any real threat, Kid explained before shrugging. Besides, we don't even have a flag yet, and unless someone from that Navi base you and the captain attacked shows up, we shouldn't have anything to worry about, Kid explained, having been told how the two had met the weird magician. It's also extremely cheap. There are amazing deals during the entire event. Nami said, excited that she could get some good food without losing much of her beloved money, getting chuckles from the rest of the crew. Well, I have no problem with this, but can we get there in time? Izuku asked, causing Nami to look at the paper and after a minute nod her head. Yup, we should be able to get there right at the start of the second day. She confirmed, having done all the calculations in her head. Well then, it's decided, we're heading to the cooking festival. Getting grins from the men and a cheer from Nami. Boom boom boom, the blast came so suddenly it knocked everyone off their feet and sent them scrambling to the floor. Izuku grunted as he got up, an annoyed scowl on his face. As soon as we take care of this mess, he told his crew, who nodded in agreement as they rushed outside to see who was attacking. Though there was no real need to worry. Giahahahaha. Men, prepare yourselves to board this ship and take everything they've got. All in the name of Captain Buggy, the blue-haired pirate announced as the Devil Kings heard the order and saw who was attacking them, only to be somewhat disappointed when they saw the clown-themed pirate who looked exactly the same as when he first fought Luffy. Kid himself couldn't help the annoyed sigh that escaped him. Really? We got all worked up over the C-lister? He asked, sharing the same annoyed look all the men had. Even Killer had rushed to the men's quarters to retrieve his mask, scythe armbands, and Hawkins' words seemed annoyed. Nami was just hoping that this would end soon so she could steal their treasure. Buggy didn't take too kindly to this, however, and grew enraged at Kid's words. What the hell did you say, you flashy bastard? The blue-haired pirate screamed at the group, who only looked annoyed at how loud he was being. God, he's annoying too. Kid muttered, ready to beat the shit out of Buggy. Watch your mouth, rookie, and show Captain Buggy some respect. Kabaji, the Buggy pirate's chief of staff, shouted from atop his unicycle. Yeah, do that and we'll make your deaths quick. Moji, the first mate, added his 2 cents, in his skinny form. Izuku, seeing they were done, just sighed. Look, it's too early for this crap, so how about you piss off and we can do this later? Izuku said, just wanting the clown to leave. Buggy just seemed to get angrier and angrier until he was shaking with rage. You flashy bastards, he finished before looking at them with bloodshot eyes. You'll pay for your insolence, he shouted before turning to his crew. Men, load the buggy balls. Flashy, send these bastards to hell, he ordered as his men scrambled to do as told before pointing a cannon at the smaller crew and loading it with a red cannonball with the Buggy Pirates logo on it. So are we going to do anything to stop this? Killer asked, looking at his crewmates, and aside from Nami, who was hiding behind the mast, the rest were just standing there waiting to see what would happen. Kid, get ready. Izuku spoke up, causing the red-haired man to raise an eyebrow before smirking and nodding in understanding. It's ready, Captain. One of Buggy's underling reported, getting a laugh from the clown. Excellent, men, now fire. The crew did as they were told, and a second later the cannonball was flying towards the Devil Kings. Kid just lazily lifted his hand. Repel. In an instant the buggy ball stopped before flying back towards the crew, who could do nothing to stop it. Boom, the force of the blast surprised the Devil Kings and forced them to grab onto something to stop themselves from being blown away while shielding their eyes from the resulting light. When the light died down and the crew could see again, they were surprised to see the bow of the ship along with most of the crew gone, leaving only Buggy, Kabaji, Moji and the Tiger Richie, who stared there dumbfounded at what they just saw. Seeing this, Izuku turned to his crew. Well, that's that. Now that's get going, he said, moving towards the helm, but stopped when he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see it was Hawkins. A moment please, Captain, let the 3 of us fight them. Fate has declared it could be beneficial to us. Hawkins spoke up, causing Izuku to raise an eyebrow before shrugging. Sure, why not? Just don't drag it out, Izuku instructed, getting a mad grin from Kid and nods from Killer and Hawkins. Right, they all said before heading off to face their opponents. As the 3 boarded Buggy's ship, Izuku noticed Nami was heading towards the woman's quarters. Not going to watch? He asked, getting a shake of the head from the orange-haired girl. Nah, they got this, I'm going to go change and get ready for the day, she informed, getting a nod from Izuku, who turned back to watch his crewmates fight. Killer versus Moji and Richie. Moji smirked as he looked down upon his masked opponent as he sat upon Richie's head, while the lion glared meaningly down at what he very much intended to make his next meal, while Killer stood there with arms crossed waiting for the duo to make their first move. Finally Moji spoke, breaking the silence. Tell me something, do you really think you can beat me? Moji, first mate of the Buggy Pirates and master animal tamer, along with his partner Richie. Moji, his voice dripping with arrogance and amusement as his smirk seemed to get bigger by the second. Killer simply nodded. I do, but I gotta say, if you fight as well as you dress yourself, I have nothing to worry about. Especially if that headdress is any indication. At that moment all amusement left his face as he glared down at his opponent. This is my real hair, you bastard. He shouted at Killer before looking at his pet. Richie, attack, he ordered, causing the lion to roar before pouncing ready to shred the masked man to pieces. Which is why it came as a shock when Killer ducked underneath the lion's front paws and wrapped his arms around the beast midsection. Bad kitty, Killer said simply before lifting the beast into the and throwing the animal into the ocean. Richie, no. Moji, who had jumped off the lion just in time, screamed to see his beloved pet hit the water before turning and glaring hatefully at Killer. You heartless bastard, how could you do that? What if Richie couldn't swim? Moji indicated as he gestured to the lion, who seemed to have lost all interest in fighting and now seemed to be trying to catch some fish to eat. Killer briefly looked over at the lion before looking back at the first mate. That sounds more like a you problem. The blonde said simply, further enraging the first mate as he took out a whip from seemingly nowhere. That's it, you masked freak. You are. Killer didn't let him finish as with surprising speed appeared right in front of the animal tamer, shocking the man before slamming his fist into Moji's face. The force behind the blow so it forced Moji through the deck into the ship below, where Moji lay there motionless. Sorry, I couldn't let you finish. Captain's orders, Killer said as he looked down at his fallen opponent before heading back to the ship. Killer versus Moji, and Richie, winner. Killer. Hawkins versus Kabaji. Kabaji was growing increasingly annoyed as his opponent calmly blocked each of his sword strikes. It only got worse when his arsonist technique and his dance of 100 kamikaze tops failed to even hit him. What was worse was, thanks to the already limited space of the ship plus all the damages to it, Kabaji was unable to unleash quite a lot of other terrain-based moves. Finally, after another exchange of blades, the chief of staff lost it. Why won't you just stand still, damn it? He shouted at the stoic man. To his surprise, however, after a moment of silence, Hawkins nodded and sheathed his sword before spreading his arms wide. Strike me down if you wish, but know that if you do, you will ensure my victory. Hawkins warned, only for Kabaji to scoff and race forward on his unicycle, sword raised high, and without hesitation slashed the man from the top of his left eyebrow at he weighed down to the top of his right leg. Ha, see that? Looks like this will result in victory. Kabaji shouted triumphantly as he looked back at his downed opponent, only to realize something is extremely wrong as Hawkins stood there completely fine. Before he could question this, however, pain exploded in his body as blood erupted from a wound. The same wound that should have been on his opponent's body. How did he do it? Was the chef of staff's last thoughts before he landed on the deck in a puddle of his own blood. The pain and loss of blood causing him to pass out, missing Hawkins raise his arm before a small doll made of straw fell out of his arm and landed on the ground with the same injury Hawkins was hit with. Hawkins versus Kabaji, winner. Hawkins. Hawkins had just made it back to the ship where he had meet up with Killer. So I see you are done as well. Hawkins greeted, getting a nod from Killer as the both jumped over to their ship, where Izuku greeted them. Well done, guys, but where's Kid? He asked, however, before anyone could answer. Screams and maniacal laughter could be heard from the cabin of Buggy's ship. Never mind. Kid versus Buggy. Shit, 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 shit. Buggy thought, frantically running as fast as he could to his cabin as he dodged large scarps of metal that kept being hurled at him from the laughing maniac behind him. At first he thought it would be easy. Sure, the man had a devil fruit and blew away most of his crew, but those were his foot soldiers and nowhere near the strength of himself, Kabaji or Moji. Plus there was his own chop fruit, so it wasn't like he could be cut. Without fear, Buggy drew his knives and lunged towards Kid with the intent to kill. It was only when his knives got stuck in Kid's metal arm did he properly notice it, and by then it was too late, as Kid had attracted weapons scattered around the deck until he had a pair of golem arms attacked and started chasing after a now terrified Buggy. Damn it, what's it going to take to bring this flashy bastard down? Buggy screamed in his mind as he finally made it to his cabin. Quickly flinging open the door before shutting and locking it, he ran over to his desk and quickly began searching for the one thing that might save him. Where is it? Where is it? He shouted, knowing he had only seconds before the maniac burst through the walls. Yes, he shouted as he had finally got it, And not a moment too soon as a second later the door burst down and Kid was standing there, his makeshift arms bigger now due to him adding weapons to them as he chased the clown. Well, here we are, end of the line. You finally ready to fight like a man? Kid taunted, a bloodthirsty grin on his face as he was ready to pummel the clown. Ha, you really think you can flashy take me, the great Captain Buddy, down? The clown asked before extending his hand and holding what looks to be a tiny ball between his finger. Behold the instrument of your destruction, the muggy. Crash. The clown was cut off as Kid shot one of his golem arms at the clown, slamming into him at point, breaking, smashing him into the wall and into unconsciousness. Kid versus Buggy winner. Kid. Well, that was fun. Kid muttered RO himself, seeing the destruction he caused, and was about to leave when something caught his eye on Buggy's desk. Curiosity getting the best of him as he went over and looked it over, and when he did his eyes widened in shock. No fucking way, Kid whispered as looked over what he was seeing, trying to find any indication that it was fake, only to find none. It's the real deal, he muttered in shock before a grin appeared on his face. Jackpot, he said as he started down at his discovery. A map of the Grand Line. A few minutes later he was back on the Karen with his discovery that Nami was now giving a through look over to make absolutely sure it was real. I can't believe it, how did that idiot get his hands on this? She questioned as she held it gently in her hands. Doesn't matter, it's ours now. Kid commented, getting nods from the others. So I guess that settles it. Izuku told them, getting his crew's full attention. After we get a cook from the festival we head straight for the Grand Line. He told them, getting nods from the guys while Nami looked a little unsure. Are you sure that's a good idea, Izuku? I mean, shouldn't we try and get a doctor first at least? We still need to get Kid patched up, she questioned, wanting to be as prepared as possible before heading towards a place that has been dubbed the Pirate's Graveyard. Izuku just smiled. Relax, Nami, we'll be fine. We can get Kid patched up when we get to the festival, there's bound to be doctors there. Who knows, maybe we can even recruit one. Izuku tired to reassure her before turning to Kid. That okay, will you, Kid? The young captain questioned, with the only injured man on the ship. Kid just nodded. Yeah, it's fine. All I really got were some scrapes and bruises, so a lot of it should heal on their own. Kid assured his crewmates, and true to his word, most of his wounds were already healed and the rest were getting better by the day. Nami, not having any other concerns she could voice, sighed tiredly but fondly. There's really no arguing with these guys, Nami thought before grinning. Well then, what are we eating for? Let's go to the cooking festival. She cheered, getting cheers from the others as they sailed on, leaving Buggy and his crew behind, already forgotten. Line break. It had 4 days for the Devil King pirates to reach the island where the cooking festival was being held, with Nami being right about them getting there on the second day. Man, look at this place, Nami said as she and the rest of the crew walked around the island, taking in the various people and makeshift shops serving food of all varieties. It's even more lively than I remember. Kid chuckled, with Killer nodding in agreement. Guess the only question is where to start. Killer asked the question that was on everyone's mind. However, before anyone could answer, an amused voice sounded from behind him. I would start with treating with your friend's injury. As one, the crew turned to face the man who intruded on their conversation, with Izuku letting out a sigh. Of course he would be here. Trafalgar D. Water Law, Izuku thought as he gazed upon the surgeon of death. What the hell is he even doing here? He should be in the North Blue or Grand Line right now, Izuku thought to himself. Meanwhile, the rest of their crew had started a conversation with Law, with Kid taking the lead. And just why the hell should we listen to a guy like you? The redhead asked, and although he couldn't place it, there was something about this man that pissed Eustass off. Law just gave his devil-may-care smile, further angering Kid, especially when Law gave a careless shrug. Well, I am a doctor, believe it or not, Law revealed, getting surprised looks from Nami, and although they couldn't see it, Killer, a raised eyebrow from Hawkins, and a disbelieving scowl from Kid. Yeah right, and I'm Big Mom's long-lost son. Kid scoffed at the claim. However, before anything could be said, Izuku entered into the conversation. If you're a doctor, then why don't you join our crew? Izuku offered, getting in curious looks from Kid and Nami, and raised eyebrows from Hawkins, Killer, and Law himself. So you lot are a pirate crew, and a small one at that, Law observed, while scratching his chin in a thinking manner. Well, we're just starting out. We actually came here to see if we could recruit a chief before heading to Grand Line. The young captain explained with Law nodding in understanding before asking his next question. So were you planning on heading to the Grand Line without a doctor? In that sea a doctor is just as important as a cook. Law said, brining up a good point. True, it would be idly to have a doctor ready right from the beginning, but if we recruit one from while in the Grand Line chances are there'll be more knowledge should a crew member come down with a disease. Izuku countered with Law nodding, admitting that was a fair point. SP, what do you say, want to join? Izuku asked, hoping Law would join. In truth, it wasn't entirely Law's medical skills that he wanted. After all, since he had all of Law's memories, he technically knew more about medicine than this current Law did. Still, there was a difference between knowledge and experience, and Law had more experience than Izuku ever entered to get. However, the other reasons were his knowledge of the word itself and the goings on in it, as well as his opope fruit, a truly dangerous fruit especially in the hands of a great doctor like Law. Law meanwhile was thinking over the offer presented to him. The reason he came here in the first place was to sign on as one of the doctors for the festival so he could earn some extra cash before he entered the Grand Line to start his plans. Now, had the people in front of him been just normal run-of-the-mill pirates, then he would have rejected the offer from the start, considering his plans would require him to gather powerful allies. True, he didn't technically have to be the captain, but if he was going to join a crew he knew it had to be a powerful one. Let's see what you're about, Law thought to himself before talking again. Before I answer, tell me, what is your goal in all of this? Law questioned. To find the One Piece and conquer the New World. Izuku answered honestly, getting a raised eyebrow from Law and smiles from his crew. Conquer the New World, how do you plan on doing that? Here Law, the Devil King, pirates themselves and everyone in the area actually had to back away as an intense bloodlust filled the area as a mad grin appeared on Izuku's face. How will I do it? Simple, by taking down anyone who gets in my way. Doesn't matter if they are the warlords, world government, or even the Yonko themselves, if they get in my way they're going down. Izuku finished before getting himself back under control and let the bloodlust die down, allowing everyone to breathe easy again. So what do you say, Law, you in? Izuku asked, sticking out his hand with a smirk for Law to shake. Law looked at the hand for a few seconds before smirking and shaking his head. Aye, Captain, he agreed, causing Izuku's smirk to widen. Great, good to have you, Izuku told him with Law's smirk matching his own. Great to be here, but you'll have to wait until the end of the week. I still am one of the doctors here after all, Law informed him with Izuku nodded. Not a problem, we'll meet up here later to show you our ship, Izuku offered with Law grinning. Perfect, now that that's settled I'll just take Red over there to patch him up at the hospital, he told the group while indicating to Eustass before turning around and headed in the direction he came from. However, he stopped a few seconds later. Come on, Red, I don't have all day, he said, annoyed without even looking, causing Eustass to glare and scowl before turning to Izuku. Are you really just letting him onto the crew just LKE that? Kid questioned. Izuku nodded. I am Kid, he'll make a good member, I know it. Kid continued to glare at his captain for a second before reluctantly running after Law. Once they were out of sight, Izuku turned to the rest of his crew. Well, with that out of the way, how about we look for Chief? Izuku asked as he began to walk forward with Hawkins a step behind him, not bothered by having a complete stranger suddenly join the crew. Nami and Killer were a little sure as they glanced at each other nervously. So you think this is going to be okay? Killer asked, hesitant with leaving his closet friend in the hands of a complete stranger. Well, Izuku usually knows what he's doing, so this should be fine, right? She said, sounding like she was trying to reassure herself then her friend. With little else they could do, the pair ran to catch up to the pair, and the four continued to look around to see everything they could and taste everything they could, which was dirt cheap, much to the happiness of Nami. The food itself was simply amazing, what one would expect for a top-scale restaurant, and there were many chefs that Nami, Killer, and even Hawkins thought would make a good addition to the crew. However, Izuku wasn't satisfied with any of them. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he just felt like they were missing something. Eventually the sun was beginning to set and the Devil Kings were just about to turn around when they saw a large crowd gathered around in the plaza of the city, along with the sounds of fighting. Curious about what the commotion was about, they decided to investigate, and upon getting closer a sigh was planted off to the side. It read, "Kill and Grill." "Oh, I remember this," Killer said, sounding excited as he got the attention of the group. "This is like a fighting cooking game. Chiefs would enter the arena with some wild beast that they caught, and if they manage to kill the beast they'll get to have the beast with up to 100,000 berries worth of ingredients to go with it." Killer explained the rules, getting interested in the contest, so they quickly pushed their way to the front, and just in time for the next event. "Alrighty folks, I hope you enjoyed that last fight," an announcer from somewhere said as they crowd cheered while a man about 10 feet tall grinned before throwing what looked like a giant dead snake over his shoulders before walking off to grab his ingredients. "Next up is our main event, people," the announcer informed, casing the crowd to go wild. While this was going on, a few of the festival workers wheeled in a giant cage that was thrashing violently with roars of anger and hunger came from it. "One on side we have the beast caught all the way in the barren archipelago, in the north blue we have the Galala gator," the announcer said as the crew opening the gate quickly while the guards stood on standby ready to protect the crowd. When the monster finally did come out, the majority of the crowd gasped in fear, and Izuku couldn't help the whistle that escaped him. The behemoth was a monster of a gator. While still in a typical gator shape, it was much bigger than an elephant, as well as having 8 legs and red skin. It had 2 rows of sharp yellow spikes that go down its scaly back much like its claws. Its eyes green and full of hunger, while its teeth were white and sharp, protruding out of its mouth. "Now then, let's introduce his opponent," the announcer shouted, pumping up the crowd even more as what sounded like heels could be heard. "She comes here from the South Blue and she's diffidently brought her appetite. Introducing the one, the only," the announcer screamed, with the crowd going absolutely crazy. Even the crew looked interested. Izuku meanwhile just had a deadpan look. "Now that makes sense," he thought dryly. "Jewelry Bonney," the announcer finally introduced as someone in the back jumped into the sky before descending and landing to reveal Bonney herself. The crowd upon seeing this managed to go even higher in volume to scream encouragement towards Bonney to show their support. However, this seemed to only annoy the pink-haired woman who glared at the crowd. "Would you all shut the hell up? I'm trying to concentrate here," the glutton screamed, making them all cower in fear, even the announcer. Seeing this, Bonney let out a grin. "Now then," she said as she turned back to the gator, who looked to be getting more and more angry. "How should I cook you?" she asked rhetorically, and as if understanding her, the beast roared and charged her with the crowd back up, not wanting to be caught in the middle of the fight. The only people that remained were the guards and the Devil Kings, wanting to see how this fight went. "It's an easy win. All she has to do is turn it either into an infant or elderly before finishing it off," Izuku thought to himself, ready to watch the pink-haired woman active her devil fruit ability. Which is why it came as a surprise when, instead of doing that, she jumped into the air to avoid the beast lunging at her before delivering a brutal axe kick right to the creature's back. The force of the kick so strong it shattered not only the creature's scale but the ground too, as cracks appeared on the stones that made up the street. "Or not," Izuku thought as he watched Bonney dance around, nimbly dodge, and brutally counter the Galala gator, sticking it in the back, head and legs, causing it to stumble, limp, and possibly being disorientated. Finally, Bonney seemed really to end it, and with one last quick punch to the neck, breaking it and killing the beast. Nobody made a sound. All wanted to cheer, but they clearly remembered what she said early. The woman in question just hissed, "Idiots, when I told them to shut up it was so I can concentrate." She was just about to explain that when suddenly clapping could be heard, and looking around she saw it was coming from Izuku, who was walking towards her, a very impressed grin on his face. "Now that was impressive," he told her before looking at the gator. "You've diffidently earned that," he said, gesturing towards the beast with his head while Bonney grinned. "You're damn right I did," she said, her arms crossed and a satisfied look on her face. Izuku smirked seeing this. "Right. Anyway, I'll be blunt, are you planning on going to the Grand Line anytime soon?" he asked, getting a nod from the pinlet. "May I ask why?" he said, getting a scoff from the older woman. "You sure do ask a lot of questions, don't you, kid?" Before waving it off. "There's something I really want to eat, and I just know it's there," she said, getting a raised eyebrow from Izuku. "And can I ask what that is?" Here Bonney's grin returned 1,000-fold as she proudly shouted, "I want to eat God." She shouted to the heavens, and even though Izuku had no idea what God was, but judging from the expressions from those gathered around, it was nothing to scoff at, if the disbelieving impaling faces were any indication, while his crew just looked around confused. Izuku was just about to ask what God was until finally what sounded like drunk laughter could be heard. Hey, stupid girl. God is nothing but a myth for young fools like you, just like the One Piece is for those damn pirates. You dreamers are just getting in everyone's way by this point. An old nasally voice sounded as the crowd parted to reveal an old man clearly drunk off his ass with the bottle in his hand and the way he keeps swaying from foot to foot. Though his words seemed to have some merit as people started whispering to each other in quiet unsure voices, Bonney, seeing this, was just about to slap the old man when suddenly the drunk found himself lifted by the shirt high into the air. The man and crowd immediately clammed up, seeing the look in Izuku's eyes before he turned to Bonney. Sorry about getting in your way. Usually I don't fight other people's fight for them, but considering he insulted my goal as well, I see it more as getting my dues too, he said, and Bonney could see it in his eyes, a familiar anger, so with a grin and a nod she let Izuku deal with him. Seeing this, Izuku turned back to the drunk who had broken out in a cold sweat. So here's the thing, I'm currently putting together a crew together to go look for the One Piece, you know, the treasure that countless people have lost their lives trying to find. You see, I can't help but applaud them that even though they failed, they chased their dreams to the very end. So when I see someone like you who clearly has never chased a dream laugh at those who have and are, well, I can't let that go. The man could do nothing but sprout gibberish at this point as he tried to steam two words together. Well, anything else to say? He asked, only for the man to start foaming at the mouth, causing Izuku to drop him on the ground, where he lay on the ground unconscious. Not giving the drunk any more attention, he turned and walked back to Bonney, who seemed to be expecting something. So here's the thing, we both seem to have crazy dreams, so why don't we do it together? Izuku asked. Come and join my crew and become our chief, and I'll do whatever I can to help you in your dream. Izuku offered, with Bonney lowered her head in thought. In truth, it wasn't a bad offer, and Izuku was right, they both have crazy dreams, so he would be the best person to travel with. Taking a glance over to where Izuku had come from, she saw an orange-haired girl, looking her over like Bonney was doing, while the tall blonde man conceived with the one in the mask, no doubt about her. They definitely don't look like common pirates, she thought before a grin came to her face. Then again, that's probably a good thing, she thought amusingly to herself before facing Izuku. Well, what I can say? You're right, us dreamers need to stick together, so count me in, Bonney said, allowing Izuku to smile full force. Well then, jewelry Bonney, welcome to the Devil King Pirates, I'm the Captain Izuku Midoriya, Izuku said, fully introducing himself, while Bonney's grin soon matched Izuku. Jewelry Bonney, get ready to have your taste buds blasted off, Bonney warned. The crowd couldn't take it anymore and burst into cheers, and in some cases tears, at seeing such a beautiful scene. Incredible, what an absolute display of passion. Defending your dreams as well as the dreams of others before deciding to chase their dreams together. To think we would be able to witness a scene of such passion. The announcer yelled at the top of his lungs, tears steaming down his face. They sure do make a lot of noise, Izuku noticed idly as the rest of the crew came over to introduce themselves to their new crew member. While this was going on, Izuku went over and threw the Galaligator over his shoulder and walked over to Bonney. Come on. You still need to pick out your ingredients to go with this thing, Izuku said, with Bonney's smile getting even bigger. Yeah, and now I have an even bigger reason to cook it, so expect some world-class dishes, she promised, missing Izuku's raised eyebrow at the fact this Bonney was willing to share her food. Nami meanwhile was looking at Animal doubtful. I don't know Bonney, I doubt anyone could make something like this taste good. Line break. So good, Nami mooed as she took another taste of her soup and said, while the rest of the crew ate their own meals from the feast in front of them as they sat in the dining room. Bonney, who had just finished an entire stick of meat, grinned smugly as she grabbed a burger before stuffing it in her mouth. What I'd tell you, Nami, there's nothing I can't cook, she proclaimed before pouring herself another large bowl of soup. Well, at least we've got one good crew member today, he said, while directing a glare at Law, who was eating a piece of fish from what Bonney got to go with the gator. Hearing this, Law looked up with a smirk. Funny, you were singing quite a different tone when she first got here this morning, Law reminded him, causing Kid's scowl to grow epically when he saw the rest of the crew smile or giggle under their breath. Izuku simply chuckled as he bit into his garlala steak. Kid was not in a good mood when they meet up again, having to spend the whole day with Law and unable to have any good food. So when he got back with Law and saw Bonney standing there just finishing setting up her stuff in the woman's quarters, he lost it, asking why they had another useless member joining them. This turned out to be a mistake, however, as a pink energy appeared in her hand, and a second later, after tapping Eustass on the air, he hunched over, suddenly becoming a little kid again and being unable to lift his metal arm, and was somewhat crushed underneath it until Bonney turned him back to normal, which she refused to do until Kid apologized. Taking a gulp of his sake, "He's the world champion, of course he's had alcohol before," he spoke up before a fight could start. "So Bonney, tell me about God. It must be incredible if it's considered a legend," Izuku requested, and this seemed to distract Bonney and Kid. "So you want to know about God, huh? Well, that's actually quite the story." And so she told them. 1,000 years ago a devastating war started, lasting for 100 years and nearly destroyed the planet. The war was not due to politics, ideals, races or economics, but something more primitive. The war was a struggle for food. In a world where travel was already difficult, and before they had the knowledge or means to preserve food or prepare plants and animals that were poisonous, too tough to cook, or were unable to be cooked for other reasons, food started becoming so scarce that countries just started fighting for whatever they could. That's when God appeared. No one knows what God is or what exactly happened when it appeared, but what is known is that when it did appear, the war ended, that the taste was so good it brought the battle-hardened country leaders to tears. After that the wars just stopped, just like that. After finishing her story, Bonney grinned at seeing the stunned faces of her new crew. "Pretty amazing story, right?" she asked them, getting dumbfounded nods from the crew. "Thought so. Anyway, since them food lovers have been searching the world for any trace of God, but none have any luck," Bonney revealed before gaining a determined look in her eyes. "But I know I'll be the one to find it, I just know it," Bonney declared, a fire burning in her eyes as she looked at the assembled devil kings, each with their own smiles and smirks. "Eating God, huh? That's quite the interesting dream," Law commented with a lazy smirk before casually rolling his eyes over to Izuku. "Almost as interesting as our captain having multiple devil fruits," he finished idly. Everyone barring Bonney, who started to choke in surprise, looked at Kid with either anger or exasperation at revealing that before Izuku could. Kid, seeing the looks, just scowled. It slipped out. He grunted as he looked at his plate like a petulant child, knowing he did something wrong. Bonney, meanwhile, had recovered from her choking fit, marched right up to Izuku, confusion and frustration written all over her face. "Explain," she demanded, while Izuku mentally groaned. "So much for a realizing night." Line break. Meanwhile, a fleet of marine battleships sailed through the ocean, each one foe, the standard ships having an 8 painted on the sail. In the front of the fleet stood the flagship. Instead of a normal cabin, it resembled more of a small castle with gold danes along the side, ending in a golden demon face as the figurehead. Inside the flagship, a group of marines stood silent and ready for orders, each one not daring to make a move as a nervous sweat went down each one of them. Suddenly a deep, gluttonous voice full of arrogance bellowed throughout the cabin. "Eric, how long until we finally arrive?" the voice asked, sounding like a deep-voiced whiny child, causing the marines to look at the source and forcing themselves to hide the grimaces of disgust. The man was incredibly obese, looking like he couldn't even walk on his own. His girth so large that typical marine jacket would not fit him properly, with only his arms and back being covered. On his stomach was a tattoo of the marine symbol. On his face he had a thin, curved mustache, swirls on his cheeks, and his eyebrows seemed to be nothing more than 2 round, dark spots. He also wore an expensive-looking golden chain along with a tall blue marine hat. This was Commodore Nelson Royal, leader of the 8th branch, and currently he impatiently waiting for the return of one of his most trusted subordinates, Eric. He called again before scowling and hitting his chair with his fist in frustration. "Where the hell is he?" he growled to himself while his subroutines looked at each other, unsure and nervous. "So sorry, Commodore, I was just making sure everything was set for our arrival, and before you ask, we should be there by early afternoon on the 4th day," a calm and somewhat suave man said as he entered the room. He was a slender man with a square-like face, long sharp fingernails and purple hair, curled upwards in the shape of the hook. He wore a gray blazer and pants and red-colored sides, and a purple striped shirt underneath. On his chest he wore a golden brooch shaped like a bird wing. He also wore a pair of earrings with pearls hanging underneath them as well as black sunglasses. Upon hearing what Eric had to say, Nelson grinned again. "Excellent as always, Eric. Now how goes our little plan?" Nelson asked, with Eric taking up a thinking pose. "No big catches yet, sir. You would think that the cooking festival would attract more pirates with bounties on them," Eric told his employer, who merely shrugged it off. "It doesn't matter if they have bounties or are even pirates. If we catch enough people and say they are pirates, we should still be rewarded handsomely for it." Nelson thought, his mouth already salivating thinking about all the money his plan will get him. Eric just smirked, amused. "An excellent plan, sir, but are you sure it's safe talking about this in front of others? Maybe it would be best if I just got rid of them," Eric suggested, raising his hand while indicating towards the Marines, who remained frozen in fear. Luckily for them, Nelson just waved it. "There's no need for that, besides," he said as he smirked cruelly over to the mares, who couldn't meet his gaze, too meek and browbeaten to say anything. Eric just smirked in amusement seeing this before turning around and leaving, having been dismissed by Nelson. As he was walking back to his cabin, he couldn't help but smirk at what is to come. "Just you wait, you filthily pirates. Your sacrifice will be my ticket to the top, not that slothish, obese oaf," Eric thought to himself as he entered his cabin to prepare for his job ahead. It was the 4th day of the cooking festival, and the Devil King pirates were enjoying themselves immensely, though that was slightly dampened by the slight tension filling the air around their ship. The cause of this? The 2 new members they had picked up just minutes after meeting them. Jewelry Bonney wasn't that bad, honestly. The woman was honestly just standoffish with most of the crew. True, she was friendly towards Izuku, but he had already proven himself in her eyes. After Izuku, Killer was the one who got along with her best, mostly because they hardly spoke with each other. Nami and Bonney had a weird relationship. At first they seemed to get along well enough and seemed to make a connection. The problem started when their personalities started to clash. Having neither been around another woman as fiery as them before, they managed to get along for the most part, but every now and then an argument would break out and the men wisely kept their distance during this time. Bonney just found Hawkins weird, not showing much emotion and seemingly knowing what's going to happen would make it difficult for the woman to come and trust the man. Her relationship with Eustass didn't improve much after that first night, throwing barbs and insults at each other whenever they got the chance. However, it was Law where most of the problems lied. For Izuku, Killer and Hawkins, the man was fine as they were able to get along with his personality and dark demeanor, as they had been around or had experienced such behavior before. Nami was okay for the most part, but still had her reservations about Law, mainly for the fact he seemed to enjoy creeping her just to get a reaction out of her, and even though the rest would deny it, the rest of the crew did find it funny whenever she freaked out. However, that didn't stop the pair from quickly becoming infuriated when Law turned this on them, with Bonney throwing around blast of aging and dealing blast at the doctor, which he calmly dodged or directed towards someone else with his devil fruit powers. This someone was usually always Kid, who had been turned into a kid or old man more times than he could count. That mixed with Law's mouth and seemingly entirely amused personality already had Kid on his last nerve. The worst part was that Law had already proven his worth as their doctor, having not only patched up Kid but also healed up any lingering injuries and scars until they were complete gone. Seeing that they had nothing to convince Izuku to kick Law of the crew with, they settled with glaring at him and snapping at him at every opportunity. This unfortunately only seemed to amuse Law, if his smirk widening during each of these times was any indication. It didn't help that Law would end each of these interactions with a very rude hand gesture. Still, he was part of the crew now and everyone had to adjust to it. Right now the crew had split up into pairs to enjoy the parts of the festival. Bonney and Nami paired up after saying they needed some girl time while looking to sample more exotic fruits and vegetables. Hawkins and Killer paired up. The pair, enjoying the quiet, spoke about past experiences while enjoying some classic noodle dishes. Finally, there was Kid and Izuku happily chatting about fights they had in the past while enjoying the surf and turf that was being served at the coast. Kid's mood was damped somewhat when Law had joined them on his lunch break, though he did crack an occasional smile and small chuckle when the doctor told them some stories of his own. With Nami and Bonney, and by the time they got back I had taken everything. Nami laughed as she finished a story from her days as a pirate thief, with Bonney laughing besides her, a huge bulging sack of food slung over her shoulder as the pair passed multiple fruit stands. Damn, they must have been pissed. Bonney continued to laugh along with Nami. The two had just finished shopping for the food that they would need for the next week, though Nami doubted that it would last 3 days given how much the crew ate, and were currently just browsing the fruit stands while trying exotic fruits from each of the 4 blues when a large crowd caught their attention. Growing curious, the two walked over and pushed their way through the crowd until they were able to properly see. The source of the crowd was a large lever with a large tankard of fruits attached to it. A large middle-aged man standing next to it. Step right up, step right up. Take a spin for a chance to win the grand prize. 3 pulls for 500 berries for. He exclaimed before spotting Bonney and Nami and beckoning them forward. You two, lovely ladies, look like you could use some fun, why not give it a try? He said, gesturing to the machine. Raising an eyebrow and seeing everyone's eyes on her, Nami looked over to Bonney, who could only shrug as a response, and seeing no other option, the two slowly approached the roulette. Alright ladies, here's the deal. Pull the lever and win a fruit, it's that simple. The machine will jumble them up before spitting one out at random. Who knows, you might even win the grand prize. The stand owner finished with a grin. Oh, and whatever could this grand prize be? A devil fruit? Bonney asked sarcastically, and a roll of her yes. However, when she saw the owner's grin widen, she felt her own eyes widen in disbelief. No way, the cook muttered, her tone matching her face. Don't believe me, step up and take your chances. The man challenged, crossing his arms and his grin firmly in place. Raising an eyebrow, she went over to the machine before facing the stand owner. Mind if I examine it? You know, just to make sure everything's on the up and up. She requested, with the man shrugging. Sure, go ahead, I got nothing to hide. With that, Nami examined the machine the best she could in every way she knew how, her years as a thief teaching her how to reveal a scam when there was one. To her surprise, however, the machine was completely untouched, working just as the man said it would. Nami's surprise must have shown on her face because the stand owner let out a laugh. Come on girlie, give me a little credit here. I know this is the perfect setup for a scam, but my pride as a gambler won't allow it. He continued to laugh. Besides, I know better to start a scam that could possibly rip off pirates. I mean, look at me, does it look like I know how to fight? He asked rhetorically, his laughter growing louder and harder. Finally, after a few seconds, he was able to get his laughter out of control. So what do you say, Red? Want to give it a try? Only 500 berry for 3 tries. He asked, with Nami thinking it over before finally shrugging. Sure, why not? She asked while approaching the lever with the crowd cheering her on. I'm surprised you're willing to do this, Bonney said as Nami handed over the coins, with Nami shrugging. What can I say? Gambling's a hobby of mine. Nami grinned before it became a smirk. Besides, worst case, I get 3 pieces of fruit cheaper than most of these stalls are selling one. Without any further prompting, Nami pulled the lever the first time. The machine shock and the sound of something tumbling could be heard until finally something landed in the tray. And for the lady's first attempt, she got watermelon berries from the West Blue. The great taste of watermelon in the convent size of strawberries. The owner told the crowd as Nami plucked one of the tiny melons off the stem and plopped it in her mouth. So sweet, she squealed in her mind, enjoying the taste before passing one to Bonney, who couldn't contain her squeal of delight. Chuckling, the stand owner passed a bag to Nami so she could hold the fruit she would win, who took it with a thank you and placed the berries in the bag before pulling the lever again, the machine shaking and tumbling, and when the crowd saw the fruit that came out, it was an apple that was colored obsidian black with red swirls covering it. Nami stared down at the fruit confused until the owner brought out a bell and begun to run it. She's done it, folks. This lovely lady has grand prize, the devil fruit. Will she eat it, or will she sell it? The choice is entirely hers. The owner yelled as a few people in the crowd shifted away, seeing the prize was gone, while the rest cheered, happy the prize had been claimed. Eat it, Nami thought, unsure of what to do. Give up the ability to swim in exchange for a power, Nami thought, her eyes looking troubled as she began to turn and walk away, only to stop. Only Bonney placed her hand on the navigator's shoulder with a raised eyebrow. You know, you still have one last pull to do, she said, pointing over her shoulder to the machine. Shaking her head, Nami walked back over to the machine after making sure the devil fruit was safely put away. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Nami apologized with a sheepish laugh, getting some chuckles in return from the audience. Pulling the machine, those watching were eager to see what the insanely lucky girl would get as her final fruit. Which is why more than a few more surprised and disappointed with what popped out. "Well, they can't all be winners, folks," the stand owner said. "Well, little lady, you scored pretty well. The grand prize and a rare watermelon berries diffidently makes up for that one dud, right?" he asked, with Nami shaking her head with a smile. "Oh, I wouldn't call this a dud," Nami said, looking fondly down at the tangerine in her hands. "Not a dud at all." Line break. "So are you going to eat it?" Bonney asked as she and Nami walked down the road towards the next food district. It had been about half an hour since they had left the stand owner and the crowd behind, with Nami currently looking the fruit over and could only offer a small shrug in return. "Maybe. I mean, I know it would be beneficial to the crew, and Hawkins did say I would get away to fight soon," Nami muttered, but still looked unsure, while Bonney just sighed. "Look, why don't we just wait until we get back to the ship? Izuku probably knows what that fruit is, he can identify it, and then we can go from there," Bonney suggested, with Nami thinking about it for a second before a smile came to her face as she nodded, causing Bonney to grin. "Great, now that that's settled, let's go get some more food," Bonney suggested, with Nami nodding in agreement, ready to do just that. And that is when explosions started. Screams of panic, the roars of fire and explosions filled the air, with the ground shaking and people running in a panic, nearly knocking the two to the ground as people ran in a frenzy to anywhere they thought was safe. "What the hell's going on?" Nami screamed, trying her best to keep from being crushed in the stampede of panic. "What do you think is happening? Someone's attacking the festival." "The question is who?" Bonney retorted, having shoved people who were getting to close out of her way. Her question, however, was answered a few seconds later, when a large square of Marines led by Eric swarmed in, while Eric himself approached the two girls, smug smile firmly in place. Well, what do we have here? Two pirate wenches walking around free?" he asked before shaking his head. "Oh no, that won't do at all," he told them, getting scowls in return. "And just what makes you think we're pirates?" Nami asked defiantly, knowing these Marines had no evidence that could prove they were. Though she did feel a lump form in her throat when Eric just snickered. "Oh, just the fact that a few of our spies witnessed that one." Here he pointed to Bonney. "Agree to join a pirate crew." And here he pointed towards Nami. "And you were not only seen with them but also left with them, and have been seen multiple times leaving the same ship as the rest of your little group." The purple-haired man finished his expiation, with the two Devil Kings clicking their tongues in annoyance. "Okay, fine, we're pirates. Congratulations, you got us." Bonney relented while saying that last bit with no small bit of sarcasm. "But that doesn't explain why you and the rest of your dogs are attacking this island. As far as I could tell, no one was doing shit before you arrived," Bonney accused, and to their credit the Marines with the mercenary did flinch and have looks of shame on their faces. Eric, on the other hand, just continued to snicker. "Oh, is that right? Funny, from what I heard, pirates attacked and bombed the island while sadly killing everyone on it before the Marines arrived and killed the vile pirates in righteous retribution." Eric snickered, which only got worse when he saw the disgusted looks on the women's faces. "Bilge rat," Bonney snarled quietly before grabbing Nami's arm. "Come on, there's too many of them here, we gotta regroup with the rest for the crew," Bonney shouted as the two began to run. "Oh no you don't," Eric thought before making a cutting motion, sending a large razor-sharp gust towards a building, hitting it and sending the debris down onto the girls, forcing them to separate, with Nami on one side and Bonney on the other. "God damn it," Bonney shouted and was about to start smashing away the wreckage, only to narrowly avoid being shot full of bullets from another approaching squad of Marines. "Bonney, are you okay?" Nami screamed, having heard the gunshots from the other side, while keeping her eyes on Eric and his squad slowly approaching, with the man clearly enjoying himself. "I'm fine, but I can't get to you right now. You'll have to handle yourself for now, can you do that?" Quote. Bonney said, trying to find the best escape route, with Nami paling at the thought of being left alone to face all this on her own. "Can I really do this?" the navigator thought as she started shaking. However, that's when she remembered the bag she was holding, and more especially what's inside out. "No, I can do it, I have a way to fight now," Nami thought to herself before bringing out the devil fruit. "Bonney, go on ahead, I'll be fine." Nami shouted with Bonney unseen by Nami. Right, I'll try to get over there as soon as I can. The cook shouted before running off and attacking any marine that got out of his way. Back with Nami, she stared at the apple in her hand with determination. Alright, let's see what you can do, Nami thought before taking a large bite out of it, with her face morphing into one of disgust as the taste hit her with Nami dropping the fruit. This must be what raw sewage tastes like, Nami thought, gagging as she could feel her taste buds die. By this point Eric and the Marines had fully encircled her as the mercenary looked on amused as he bent down and picked up the apple that had stopped by his feet. Oh, so you think eating a devil fruit would help you survive this little encounter? He asked amusedly, with Nami smirking in amusement. You bet I do. Now get ready, Nami warned, and with a shout extended her arm forward, with the Marines bracing themselves and Eric standing there calmly while watching, one smile still in place as everyone waited for whatever power Nami now had to appear. Only for nothing to happen. Nami stood there, smirk still place, but now a light sweat covering her body. I said get ready, she repeated before jerking her hand forward several times, only for nothing to happen again. By this point Nami was pale, covered in sweat, and had a terrified smile on her face with a single thought on her mind. That bastard tricked me, she thought to herself, furious at the fruit vendor for false advertising. A chuckle from Eric however drew her attention back to him, with Eric speaking when he noticed this. Let me guess, you're probably thinking this is some kind of trick, and whoever gave you this lied to you, right? He guessed, with Nami's eyes widening. I'll take that as a yes greater than, he contrived. Well, I tell you this much. This fruit is very much the real thing, Eric admitted. The problem however is that you immediately thought it could save you when you didn't even know which one it was or what it did, Eric said with a shake of his head. A sad thing really. Most common reason new devil fruit eaters die so soon after eating them. Now then men, things have changed, and seeing as we don't know exactly what this woman can do, it's best if we just eliminate her right here and now, Eric declared, causing dread to flare up in Nami, her legs starting to wobble especially as the Marines brought out their guns and got into firing position. Eric smirked as he raised his arm, seeing Nami's legs give out, causing her to collapse. Ready, aim, he ordered, seeing the orange-haired girl close her eyes and brace herself the best she could. Fire. Gun fired filled the air, and Nami flinched multiple times as she heard each one, all the while praying she would somehow make it out of this. However, after a few seconds the fear and panic left her body, replaced with confusion as she realized she wasn't in any pain. She doesn't even think she was hit once. The confusion only increased when she heard multiple thuds and shouts of panic and alarm, with Eric screaming for his men to calm down. Slowly Nami opened her eyes, to see to her shock several men with guns surrounding her and facing the Marines, gun barrels smoking as they were pointed forwards, where several Marines were laying face down in their blood. You all right? A deep voice asked from her left, causing her to turn and see a giant of a man looking down on her, a beautifully crafted hammer as big as her on his back. He had long spiky hair that reached the back of his neck and piercing gray eyes, with his body covered in tattoos and scars. Hesitantly she took his hand as he helped her up. Why yeah, I'm fine, and sorry, but who are you, and why are you helping me? Nami asked hesitantly, not wanting to sound rude to the people who saved her. The answer didn't come from the man however, but Eric, who quirked an eyebrow. Now this is a surprise. Captain Jacob Barbassa of the Black Hammer Pirates, originally from the North Blue and worth 44 million if I'm correct. Eric introduced the man, now named as Jacob, nodded before facing Nami again. Like swirly over there, said, I'm the captain of the Black Hammer Pirates, and as for why we saved you, well, when it comes to facing the Marines, pirates need to stick together. Especially when it comes to protecting our best chance at victory. Jacob explained his reasoning, with Nami smiling at the first part but growing confused at the second. Seeing the look, Jacob just sighed. Look, my guys saw you win that devil fruit, and judging from the bite taken out of it, it's obviously you've eaten it, he said, gesturing to the fruit that was laying a few feet away. So we know you've got some kind of ability, and I believe when it comes to a power user, it's best to use another power user, Jacob revealed before raising his hand to stop her protest. Even if that power user only got it a few seconds ago. Here the pirate captain looked her directly in the eye. If me and my men can hold them off long enough, can you figure out your powers and beat that visor-wearing bastard? Nami looked shaken before slowly turning, Seeing that both pirates and marines were at a standoff, just waiting for the other side to make a move, even as fire and screams still surrounded them. Closing her eyes and clenching her fist tightly, Nami had a single thought in her mind. I don't have to run away anymore, I can actually be useful to my crew now, and it all starts here. Opening her eyes, she looked up to Jacob and nodded. I can, she declared with a smile erupting on the captain's and his crew's faces. Well, you heard her, guys, Jacob said, turning to face the Marines with his hammer in hand. Let's show these bastards what the Black Hammer pirates can do. Jacob roared, with his crew soon joining in as the charged, swords and guns raised to meet the Marines, who shouted a war cry of their own as they meet the oncoming pirates, with Jacob facing Eric personally. Nami watched the two groups fight and kill each other for a moment in shock before she was able to shake off those nerves and focus on the task at hand. Okay, what should I try? Nami thought frantically as she tried to come up with any kind of idea. She even thought about her crewmates and how they used their powers. They all used them so easily, as if it is second nature to them. I mean, it probably is, but they act like their powers are a natural part of them, they can draw on whenever they want. Nami thought frantically, trying before her eyes widened. A natural part of me. Could that be it? She thought. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes, and focused on every part of her, trying to act like she was doing something she could be doing all her life, and what she was doing was something that came natural to her. And that's when it happened. A light emerged from the palm of her hand that almost blinded the pirates and Marines alike as Jacob grinned while Nami stared in awe. This is my power, Nami thought as she slowly moved it around in her hand. It's beautiful, but what can it do? Nami thought, staring at the little glowing orb. As she finished that, though, she was shocked when the orb left her hand and flew into the fire she was standing next to, with everyone watching either eager or dreading what came next. And they weren't disappointed, as once the sphere entered the fire it seemed to become possessed, raising high into the air in a cyclone of fire as every flame around them seemed to be attracted to the storm until it was the size of a large tower. What truly terrified everyone, though, was the face that seemed to form on the tower, a menacing face not unlike a demon smiling down on its next meal. Eric clicked his tongue with a light seat rolling down his face. He had a few cuts and bruises from his battle with Jacob, while the pirate captain in question laughed despite the multiple bloody wounds that he had received while glancing towards the mercenary in question. You know you can back out and retreat any time you want, Jacob suggested in an innocent tone, getting him another cut across the torso from Eric, who started to walk over to Nami while ignoring Jacob, who despite his injuries was laughing at seeing the smug merc start to lose his cool. Eric, seeing that Nami was still staring at the face in the fire and didn't notice he was coming, grinned before launching another slash attack at the girl to land a hit on her back and if not kill her, at least hurt her. Unfortunately for him, someone did notice, and just as the attack was about to land, a wall of fire intercepted the attack, complete blocking the navigator from harm. Nami had turned just in time to see this but had on time to react. "Are you all right, my queen?" a voice said from behind her, causing her to jump and slowly turn around to see the face looking down at her. However, unlike before, it now had a look of concern on its face. "My queen." The fire spoke again, knocked her out of her stupor and quickly gave a nod. "Yup, I'm fine. Perfectly fine actually. 100%. She quickly said, getting the fire's equivalent of a nod of relief and understanding. "But Nami started, this time looking at the fire hesitantly. "Why are you calling me your queen?" Nami asked. "Because you are my creator and therefore my queen," the fire answered, stunning Nami for a moment before a happy grin appeared on her face. "That's right. I am your queen," she said happily, "and as your queen I must know. ... Do you have any cuter forms you can turn into?" She finished, trying to act cute with both pirates and Marines and even Eric face valuing at the question. The fire didn't even blink. "Of course, my queen." With that, the fire started to compress and shrink until it was 7 feet 10 and shaped like a sun with miniature suns orbiting it. "Much better," Nami cheered, clapping her hands together in happiness with the sun grinning proud. It made its queen so happy. It was at this point Eric decided to move again, this time going for a direct attack, ready to tear out the orange-haired girl's throat with his sharpened fingernails. Unfortunately for him, he didn't make it more than 5 steps before a plum of fire washed over him, with the Marines watching in horror, the pirates watching in caution, and Nami mortified at seeing someone being burned alive. Something that was justified when the fire had cleared and all that was left was a smoldering, burnt corpse. The pirates seeing the corpse let out a cheer, happy that the worst threat was done for good, while Nami could only look on in disbelief. How can they be so happy about someone's death? She thought, and could help but be disgusted by their behavior. And just how are they supposed to act when dealing with someone who was trying to kill them? A small voice in the back of Nami's head asked, and Nami could see where it was coming from. Eric had been talking about killing everyone on the island so casually, and for what a little fame and recognition. True, he might have also been able to get his hands on the money that everyone had brought here on their ships, something Nami could admit sounds tempting, but even money isn't worth the death of so many innocent people. Besides, if we're going to the Grand Line, their killing and death is going to become a calm thing, both seeing it and dealing with it. Nami reminded herself, something Izuku brought up when they first started, and even though he seemed a little pale and very reluctant, he did say it was something that would be impossible to avoid. That doesn't mean I have to like it, she thought with sadness in her eyes before they widened in alarm as she saw two Marines shaking in both fear and rage sneak up behind Jacob ready to cut him down. Without thinking, she raced forward in order to help, with the two Marines noticing her approaching and stopped in their tracks, frozen in fear. What everyone who noticed this going on found strange was that a light-colored substance floating off them. Not slowing down in the least and figuring it had to do with her new power, Nami jumped in the air, flying over the pirate captain, and two Marines grabbed the substance from each of them and pulled them off the Marines and into her. Nami's eyes widened as she felt the substance enter her body. 60 years and 74 years. She thought the numbers coming to her from nowhere as she stared down at the two Marines laying unmoving on the floor. By this point, the Marines had started backing up slowly. The same substance that was coming off the first two Marines was now coming off them in droves. It only got worse when a building was smashed to pieces and from the wreckage came Hawkins, Bonney and Killer. Upon seeing them, the Marines simply ran for it, not bothering trying to keep up with appearances anymore, and simply fled for the coast. Bonney, seeing this, Eric's charred body and the living sun around Nami, smirked and placed her hands on her hips. "Well, I see you've got things handled here," she stated, with Nami matching the cook's grin with one of her own. However, before anything else could be said or introductions between the Devil Kings and Black Hammers could be made, multiple explosions from the coast occurred, catching everyone's attention. "Perhaps we should save the pleasantries for later. Our crew might need our help," Hawkins suggested, knowing Izuku, Kid and Law were probably still at the port. Everyone seemed to be in agreement as both pirate crews headed for the coast, ready to help in the next battle. "Line break. There's no end to these flies," Kid growled as he, Law and a large group of pirates fought a seeming unending horde of Marines while trying to defend themselves from a barrage of cannon fire from the fleet on the Marines' ships. Admittedly, the second part was simplified thanks to the two Devil Kings' Devil Fruit abilities and the fact that they were just standard transport ships. Still, it was a pain for Kid and Law to handle not only cannonballs, other Marines, but also the different pirate crews that were trying to get in each other's way. "Yeah, well, that's what the captain's trying to take care of, right?" Law shot back, remembering how Izuku told them to keep the Marines busy while he snuck the fleet of ships and everyone on board. Kid just skied. "Yeah, well, whatever he's planning, I hope he pulls it off soon." The redhead muttered while smashing another group with his golem arm as Law cut more soldiers down with his sword, not wanting to make a mistake with his devil fruit in all of the confusion. However, the fighting at the coast unexpected came to a stop when a massive amount of mist rolled in out of nowhere, unnerving both sides, with both believing this was an attack from the other. "What the hell is this?" Kid muttered as he scowled in confusion, trying to understand this new development. "Could be the captain's plan," Law suggested, with the pirates around looking hopeful and the Marines tensed. The mist continued to spread until it fully covered the ships. That's when the fun, depending on who you asked, begun. It all started with a commotion a little bit away from Kid and Law, with Marines shouting at each other, with their attention now squarely on the cause of the commotion rather than the pirates. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" A voice a few feet from them screamed, and turning, all the pirates gathered watched with stunned eyes as a large Marine cutting down his smaller comrades, while the Marine in question seemed to be fighting against something. I can't control my hand, stay away from me," he ordered while grabbing his left hand with his right one. The most unusual thing however was that there was a large hole clean through the Marine's left hand with the mist entering it. Bang, bang, bang. Gunfire rang through the air as Marines clutched different parts of their body with each one of them hit or not starting to panic. The panic turned to full-blown terror when the mist started entered their wounds from the gunfire or the fighting beforehand, cleaning them out and enlarging them until they was the same size and shape as the one on the large Marine's hand. It didn't get any better from there as the Marines seemed to become possessed, being thrown up in the air, crashing into each other, being forced to fight each other and so on. It was at that time Izuku reappeared, having used Shave to appear from wherever he was working from earlier. "Yo, Midoriya," Kid greeted as he and Law ran over, both with grins on their faces as they were watching the Marines being thrown around and humiliated with great amusement. "How the hell are you doing this, man? I mean, it's awesome, but still," Kid had to ask with Izuku just smirking. "Simple, Eustass. Since these Marines deemed it fit to throw away their sense of justice, I decided to show them my justice," Izuku explained while pointing up into the sky, with Kid and Law looking up and their eyes widened at just what they were seeing. This was the power of the stand fruit, more specially the justice stand. "Well, whatever the hell that thing is, it's working," Law said, seeing the morale of the Marines completely shattered and only getting worse as pirates were quick to cut down the remaining Marines with glee. Izuku watched with no emotion before turning his head with a sigh. Now was not the time to think about that, not when there was still a job to do. "All right, listen up," Izuku spoke loudly, getting not only his crew but everyone's attention focused on him. "Now that the ground forces are gone, we just need to get rid of these ships. I got a way to do it, but I could use some help to do it. Now then, are there any snipers or gunmen here?" he questioned, with several pirates nodding, stepping forward. "Right, your job is simple. I just need you to shoot the Marines on the ships. It doesn't have to be fatal, it just has to give them a wound. Can you do that?" he asked, his own arm becoming a sniper rifle as he looked at the snipers, who looked unsure for a second before they turned to their own crews and captains, who gave them a simple nod, inspiring the snipers and giving them the determination to try and help their own crews. Satisfied, Izuku turned to the ships while the snipers got into position, either standing or crouching. "Ready," Izuku said, raising his own sniper gun arm as the others braced themselves. "Aim." Here he activated the glare fruit and set his sights directly on Nelson, a man he recognized through both Luffy's and Eric's memories, and aimed directly for his pudgy cheeks, as the other snipers aiming for their own targets around the fleet. Fire. The sound of gunfire was heard all around the coast as bullets were shot clear across the distance, some hitting, others missing. The ones that hit were also varied. Some only grazed the Marines, others hit dead center where the shooter wanted them to, with even a few lucky shots going right through the head, killing them instantly. Izuku himself was able to land 2 well-placed shots on Nelson's cheeks, causing them to explode into puddles of blood, with the obese man crying out in pain as he clutched his cheeks with his hands, blood pouring down from between his fingers. That was the least of his worries though, as within seconds the mist cleared out the blood and grabbed hold of him, his weight meaning to it except for the trenches he dug into the ship when it dragged him through the ship, with his crew being unable to help him, having no time to help him. Finally the mist seemed to have enough and decided to simply throw him overboard, the man sinking into the sea, before he could even utter another word. Back on the deck of the ship, things weren't getting any better as the Marines had to deal with their comrades, both living and dead, attacking them and adding them to the ranks of the controlling mist. A lieutenant who was fighting for his life was breathing heavy. Make sure he didn't kill any of his comrades that weren't dead already. "Sir, we got trouble," a new recruit shouts, having run up to the now in charge lieutenant, who glared back at the man. "No sit, private, now get back to work or all." He was cut off when the sound of a cannonball whizzing through the air could be heard before an explosion hit the ship, rocking back and forth. "That's what I was trying to tell you, sir," the private said desperately. "An entire fleet of pirate ships have entered out of the mist," the man said, with the lieutenant looking around in horror as the fleet surrounded them, having already destroyed the rest of the Marines' fleet. Frantic, he turned to the young officer while both men did their best to avoid the cannon fire that was now raining down on their ship. "Gather up everyone you can, and return fire," the lieutenant ordered. "We may be going down, but I'll be damned if we don't take a few of these bastards with us," he screamed, with the private scrambling to obey before disappearing below deck. The lieutenant then turned his attention back to the now dead and fully controlled corpses of the Marines. Alright you undead monsters, you want a fight, you've got one. The man roared, ready to fight until his last breath. Line break. Back at the coast, the pirates were celebrating as they watched the Marines fire and destroy each other. The Marines being under Justice's illusion ability, causing them to see their own allies as enemies and fire on them without mercy. Law and Kid, while not joining in the celebration, did smirk as they watched the Marines destroy each other. However, those smirks changed to frowns of concern as they glanced over to their young captain, who was watching the massacre with unblinking eyes. "Hey Trafalgar," Kid said, getting Law's attention. "Do you think this could be the first time the captain's ever?" Quote. He trailed off with Law finishing his statement for him. "Killed someone? Yeah, I think so." Law saw and both continued to watch. Both knew that in piracy killing was a must and they even enjoyed it to a certain degree, Kid certainly more so, but both could tell Izuku didn't share that statement. Despite that though, they did feel happy and a bit of pride that he was willing to put his morals to the side when it came what was needed for the betterment of the crew and fellow pirates. A sigh from Izuku got their attention as Izuku turned and walked towards them, a tired but revolved look in his eyes. "You all right, boss?" Law asked with a raised eyebrow, concerned about the captain's mental state. To his relief, the younger man nodded with another sigh. "I'm fine, though I could go for 12-hour nap right about now," he joked, getting small chuckles from the other Devil Kings. "Come on, let's go find Killer and the others," Kid suggested, with the other two nodding, wanting to know how the rest of the crew was doing. "There's no need for that," a calm male voice spoke as Hawkins and the rest of the Devil Kings along with the Black Hammers approached them. However, what Izuku's, Kid's and Law's eyes were drawn to was the sun hovering around Nami. "Is that Prometheus?" Izuku asked, shocked at seeing the sun homie there. "Hey guys," Nami greeted a bit sheepishly as she saw the boys staring at the new sun. "Seems like you guys have been through a lot," she said as the three deadpanned her. "Yeah, looks like we could say the same about you," Kid muttered, staring not only at the sun but at the pirate crew behind them. "How about you go first?" As the two groups swapped stories, they didn't know they were being observed by two sets of eyes, completely unaware of each other. One set had amusement and intrigue while the other had disturbing curiosity and animalistic bloodlust. Line break. "Are we really leaving before the festival is over? The place is practically empty since yesterday," Bonney asked as she along with the rest of the crew loaded up the cairn with supplies as they prepared to set sail. "It's for the best. The news of this attack will reach the higher-ups of the Marines soon, and this island will be crawling with them before long," Nami said, laying down the box she had been carrying. "We would have been out of here last night, but it would have been a nightmare navigating not only the other ships but the debris from the sunken Navy ships," Nami explained, dusting off her hands. "Good point," Bonney shrugged. "Still, it's a shame that Jacob had to leave in a hurry. His crew actually seemed decent." Bonney recalled Jacob being one of the first crews to leave after saying goodbye and exchanging Den Mushi numbers. Nami nodded in agreement before turning her attention to her son that approached the ship, another couple boxes on his head. "Thanks, Ama," Nami thanked her homie. After everything had stalled down yesterday, Izuku took Nami aside and explained to her what her new power was. Turns out she ate the soul fruit, a fruit that was supposed to have been eaten long enough by the Emperor Big Mom. Izuku then went on to describe all the mechanics of the fruits and how it works, the differences between the different kind of homies and what the limits were. After hearing all that, Nami was excited, but managed to control herself, knowing that creating an army of servants would require a lot of soul power, so until she could get more, she'd have to spend it wisely. In the meantime, Nami decided to name her son homie Ama, a cute nickname for Amaterasu, a sun goddess. Ama just grinned, happy at its queen, happy to continue to please her. That's when Izuku, Law and Killer came out of the lower decks of the ship, making sure they were stocked up on everything they needed. "Hey girls, is that the last of it?" Izuku asked, seeing the two women of the crew return from their grocery food run, with the two women nodding as Izuku created clones in order to take it to where Bonney wanted it. "So now all we're waiting on is Basil and Eustass," Law muttered while sitting on the side of the ship before spotting something causing him to squint, before his eyes widened a fraction and he let out a sigh. "Never mind, they're here," he said before staring at where the duo was approaching from. "And they brought a friend." He deadpanned, causing Killer and Izuku to grow curious, which grew after they saw Kid stomp onto the deck, a scowl firmly in place. "Before you start, I just wanted to say this wasn't my idea," the redhead muttered before going to stand next to his childhood friend, who had a confused look on his face. Before they could question him though, more footsteps could be heard as Basil Hawkins walked up with this friend of theirs. Both had several bags in their hands. She was a beautiful woman with long legs that put her above average height. She had long, wavy, light green hair and amber eyes. She wore a green cropped tank top with the word "Happy" written in dark green on the chest and yellow cutoff pants with orange strips. Monae, Izuku thought as he stared at the would-be harpy with suspicion in his eyes. "Okay, I'm just going to say it, who the hell are you?" Bonney demanded of the green-haired woman, who simply smiled pleasantly. "Greetings, my name is Monae, and I will be traveling with you all starting today." Here she gave a quick bow of the head. "I hope we all get along," she finished with an ironically warm-hearted smile. Grinding her teeth, Bonney was quick to continue her interrogation. "Oh, yeah, and just who the hell invited you?" the pink-haired cook questioned, with Monae simply gestured towards the magician. "Why, Basil did, of course," she answered, with everyone's eyes landing on him. Seeing this, Hawkins spoke, his answer as predictable as ever. "Fate has declared allying ourselves with her would be mutually beneficial," he answered simply, with Bonney scoffing. "Sorry to say, but things like this aren't his call. So how about you turn around and go back to wherever it is you came from?" Bonney suggested as she went to grab the girl by the smolders, only for her to be met with snow. "A devil fruit," Bonney shouted in shock, with Monae letting out a small giggle. "Oh, people reactions are always so amusing." She laughed. "Yes indeed, I'm a power user, the snow fruit in fact," the green-haired woman revealed before looking towards Izuku. "What do you say, Captain? Am I allowed to join?" she asked, with Izuku looking at her with an unreadable look. "Why?" he asked at last. "Why do you want to join this crew?" That was the million-berry question, and it seemed to be the right on as Monae's smile became a little bit more honest and genuine. "My sister Sugar. I was separated from her years ago when we were only kids, and have been searching the Four Blues for her. Sigh, but I've come to realize she's probably already left for the Grand Line. It's a dream we always talked about." Monae finished her story and looked straight at the crew. "I know my sister is in the Grand Line somewhere, and this crew is my best shot to find her. It's a pretty good deal, you have to admit. I get a strong enough crew to help me look for my sister, and your crew gets their hands on a Logia power user." Monae reasoned, with the crew thinking over the offer. "Well, Captain, what do you think?" Law asked, knowing final say went to him. Izuku just sighed and massaged his temples. "Welcome aboard," he said, getting gasp from Nami and Bonney to look at each other unsure, Kid to scowl in annoyance, Killer and Hawkins to nod, and Law to grin, seeing the annoyed faces on their faces. Monae just smiled cheerfully. "Thank you, Captain, I'm eternally grateful." She thanked him before turning to the other two women of the crew. "Could you show me to where we will be staying? I've got a lot of unpacking to do," Monae requested, with the toad just glaring suspiciously at her, the events of the previous day still having that slightly on guard. Seeing this, Izuku couldn't hold in his groan. "Just do it," he told them, who reluctantly did as they were asked, grumbling under their breaths as they did so, as Monae grinned more and more as she followed them, growing more amused as the more she heard. When the woman disappeared into their cabin, the rest of the crew let out a collective groan, a single thought shared between them. "It's too early for this shit. Line break. Nami, are we all ready to go?" Izuku asked from the deck of the ship. Nami, a few steps behind him, with a grin on her face, nodded as the entire crew was now on the deck, having moved Monae very quickly. "We're a set, Captain. Just give the word," Nami told him, causing Izuku to nod as he faced his crew. "All right, everyone. I think it's about time we left for the Grand Line. The East Blue has treated us well, but no, it's time we move on to greater things. Sound good, everyone?" he asked, with smirk getting smirks and cheers in return. "Well then, everyone, set sail," Izuku shouted, getting a shout in return as they pulled the anchor up and the Karen set sail en route to the Grand Line. In their excitement, they never noticed a boat following behind them, shaped like coffin, with candles burning a haunting green color. It was also small, only able to fit the single passenger it currently had, in the black blade on their back as they followed the Devil King pirates at a distance. all the while keeping Izuku in sight. The sun was shining brightly over the Devil King pirates as they found themselves relaxing on a small beach island. It had been a few days after the crew had left the cooking festival, and after spending nearly a week on the sea, the crew thought it'd be best to stretch their legs and spend the day relaxing. So here they were taking a day to enjoy themselves on a picture-perfect beach. Izuku was dozing underneath an umbrella as the rest of the crew was doing their own thing. Law and Kid were seeing who could launch a cannonball further with the help of their powers, with Killer and Hawkins acting as the judges. Bonney was preparing a barbecue with Monae assisting her. Monae actually fit in pretty well with the crew. She was distant but nice enough and did seem genuine in her attempts to help around the ship. Though a few of the crew such as Bonney, Nami and Kid were still weary of her, not willing to trust her just yet. As for Nami, she was currently stretched out sunbathing while letting out a relaxed sigh. This is the life, the navigator thought with a smile. However, a second later it changed to a frown of confusion when she was hit was felt like a couple of raindrops. How the, she muttered before her eyes widened in realization and alarm as she scrambled to move. Wait, don't. Boom. A downpour rained down on Nami, whose hair was now soaked, covered her eyes as she sat there motionlessly as the other Devil Kings watched on in varying amounts of amusement while also complete dry. Sorry, Nami. A voice from above the navigator said lazily as Nami's eyebrow started to twitch slowly, getting faster and faster as her body started to shake until finally Mount Nami erupted. Damn it, Sue! Nami shouted at the top of her lungs as she glared up at a small cloud that actually looked back and smiled lazily. I said I was sorry. The cloud defended itself as Amma came over to scold the cloud for drenching their creator. This was Sue, the second homie Nami created after Izuku told her more about how Big Mom used the soul fruit. So with the help of Izuku, Sue the storm cloud homie, whose name was short for Susanoo the storm god, was born. Speaking of Izuku, Nami's shouting had woken him up, and when he found the source he couldn't help but chuckle to himself. Looks like Nami's already getting better at using Big Mom's powers, he thought to himself. However, that thought did cause his smile to be replaced with a frown. At first Izuku thought getting through this world would be pretty easy. Sure, some things might not be dangerous, but nothing that big a difference had happened, so Izuku wasn't that worried about it. Nami getting the soul fruit changed that. It showed Izuku that anything could be different, and if he relied only on the memories he got from other devil fruit users, then it could be disastrous for him and the crew in the long run. So for now he would have to just go with it for now and hopefully be able to pull through enough with his crew until he's able to get back home. If you want to go home by then, a stray thought whispered, with Izuku violently shaking his head with a scowl to rid himself of the rouge thought. Luckily there was something to distract him as a shout from Kid alerted the crew that someone was trying to steal the ship, so with a quick shave Izuku appeared on the deck of the ship. There were 3 would-be thieves. The first has purple hair tied in a short ponytail at the top of his head, and a prominent nose. He wore a stripped yellow shirt with a blue vest over it, short blue jeans with light blue polka dots, a blue pirate sash, simple black shoes, and a pair of round sunglasses on top of his head. The second had black fuzzy hair that has a disco style to it, a goatee of the same color, and a square face with a somewhat big nose. He wore pink disco clothes that has white edges, a purple pirate sash, and white shoes. The third has short pink hair that is parted to the sides, revealing his forehead. He wore what appears to be a casino employee suit complete with bow tie, and an open black jacket over it with the onsen signs on the collars, gray pants with a red pirate sash, and black shoes. Upon seeing Izuku suddenly appear on the ship, the 3 let out a surprised scream as they huddled together in fear. Where did he come from? The one with fuzzy hair asked, with pink hair just shaking. No idea, he stammered while Ponytail scowled and managed to stop himself from shaking. Doesn't matter, he's just one guy, he said, bringing out a knife. Which means we can take him. He finished with a shout as he started to charge at Izuku. Only for Izuku to casually backhand him into the sea with the other 2 standing there looking gobsmacked. This turned out to be a mistake, however, as Izuku instantly disappeared from sight only to appear right behind them and slam their heads into each other before tossing them into the sea. Izuku! A shout came from behind him, causing him to turn and see Nami riding Sue over to him. Is everything okay? She asked, getting a nod from her captain. Yeah, just a few would-be boat jackers. He told her, gestating with his head to where the three had landed in the water. Well, that's good to hear. Nami said, relived their ship and all their things weren't stolen. Now come on, Bonney's got the food ready, so let's go get some before it's all gone. And with that, Izuku and Nami returned to the island while ignoring the arguing trio in the water. Line break. It had been a few days since the attempted boat theft and the Devil Kings were currently hanging out on the deck of their ship. So Ms. Navigator, how long until we make it to the Grand Line? Law asked as he and Nami looked over the maps they had, with Nami bringing her finger to her chin in thought. About a week, give or take. Nami finally answered as she continued to look her maps over. Though we should probably stop here to resupply before we enter the Grand Line. Nami said, pointing to an island on the map. Oh yeah, and what island would that be? Kid said, wanting to get to the Grand Line as soon as possible. Luge Town. Nami's answer, however, did cause the entire crew's eyes to widen at the mention of the legendary name. Hey, now when you say Loungetown, you mean the island where? Kid trailed off as he saw the navigator nod. Where the king of the pirates, Gold Roger, was born and executed, yes. Nami confirmed, with the crew looking towards each other before Kid coughed into his hand. Well, maybe stopping there wouldn't be a complete waste of time, Kid said, trying to hide the excitement in his voice, a sentiment shared by the rest of the crew. Except one. Izuku stood at the back of the ship looking over the horizon, searching for any signs of life, only to see nothing. Over the past few days something had been following the crew, something insanely powerful that definitely belonged the new world, but whenever Izuku tried to discover it was such as by using the glare fruit or flying over to the source, it always managed to disappear. When he brought this up to his crew, there were some concerns about what the source was after, but it was thanks to Law's and Hawkins' reasoning that if they wanted something from the Devil Kings, then they would have already been attacked. That put most of them at ease. Though Izuku was still a little unnerved, there was already many things that were different and made all the knowledge Izuku had useless. A commotion from the front of the ship caught Izuku's attention, who walked to see what was going on, only to see man and a boy laying face down on the deck, lumps forming on both their heads as multiple empty trunks laid beside them, with Nami sulking in the concern, being comforted by her homies. Looking over to the rest of his crew, who was watching with various forms of amusement, Izuku raised an eyebrow. Mind telling me what's going on here? The captain asked, with Monae letting out a giggle as she answered. We found these two in a little boat with the big one passed out and the kid begging for help. We were about to pass them by when the kid shouted we could have all their treasure if we saved his brother. Monae explained with a smile. Naturally this got Nami's attention, who quickly sent Little Sue to retrieve their boat. The second the boat landed on our ship, however, the older one sprang to life and demanded we hand over all our treasure to them, who reveled himself as Boruto and his younger brother Akisu, their brothers. Monae said, her giggling turning into a full-blown laugh, and you can see how that turned out. Monae finished her explanation with Izuku nodding in thanks before walking over to get a closer look at the two brothers. Boruto was a simple-looking man with brown hair. He wore an aviator jacket and, interesting enough, had a prosthetic arm. Akisu is a young boy with dark hair and two dimples below his eyes. He wears a white beanie and a pair of goggles around his neck, as well as a green coat and white shirt. Izuku, upon looking closely, he could see Boruto's hand give the smallest of twitches, which resulted in the young captain stepping on the older man's hand. Hard. Www. Boruto screamed at the top of his lungs as he shot up, clutching his injured hand. What the hell? He yelled, causing Akisu to also jump, showing he was also faking. Big bro, are you okay? He asked, concerned for brother, who was taking a few deep breaths to distract himself from the pain. I'm fine, Akisu barely felt a thing. The older thief told him, though no one beloved him except for Akisu because of the squeaky voice and tears in his eyes. A clearing of a throat caught the two brothers' attention as Izuku stood with the rest of the crew, even Nami, who was now glaring at them. So mind explaining yourselves? Izuku asked. Thought everyone could tell it was nothing short of a demand. This caused Boruto to grin sheepishly. Yeah, sorry about this. We were sailing by and overheard you guys talking about the Grand Line and figured you were just another band of wannabes. I mean, you don't even have a Jolly Roger yet. Boruto tried to explain, and the crew had to admit he made a few good points. There were countless pirates who talked about going to the Grand Line and coming from a band of pirates numbering only 8 and coming from the East Blue. It was understandable, annoying but frustrating. The Jolly Roger on the other hand was a bit of a sore subject as none of them could come up a good enough design. With a sigh Izuku turned to the rest of his crew. Alright, so what should we do with them? Izuku asked with Kid just TS King. Throw them overboard, we've got shit to do and we don't have time to fool around with these clowns. Kid insulted, getting Akisu furious. Hey, don't insult us, Flamehead. My brother is going to be the greatest thief in the world. The younger twin declared, getting a twitch of irritation from Kid for the Flamehead comment, which only got worse when he heard snickering from his crew in the background. Ignoring this, Akisu continued his speech. It and all starts with us stealing the famous diamond clock of Clockwork Island. The young boy said proudly before screaming out in fear as Nami seemingly teleported in front of him. The diamond clock? You mean the famous that's said to be absolutely priceless? She asked, her eyes turning to Barry signs. Akisu just smirked and crossed his arms. The very same, he said proudly. In fact, we would have already stolen it if it weren't for. Here the young child trailed off, looking a bit defeated. Getting raised eyebrows from most of the crew. If it weren't for, Monae asked, clearly fishing for information as Akisu sighed. If it weren't for the Trump pirates. For the love of God, no one make a single comment about politics. That shit seems to have weaseled itself into a lot of things it doesn't belong, and I'll be damned if it gets into my story. I don't care about your political views and you don't care about mine, and any comments that do appear will be instantly deleted. At the mention of the name the crew blinked. The Trump pirates? Kid asked, confused, before turning to the rest. The crew. Any of you ever heard of them? He asked, with most shaking their heads no except for Nami, Izuku and surprisingly Law. Yeah, I've heard of them. They have a lot of crews working for them, but all of them are pretty low tier. In fact, I think the only ones who have are their captain and commanders, and even together their combined total is a little less than 39 million. Law revealed. Yeah, plus they don't even leave the island they're stationed at that often. Nami said before turning to face Akisu. I'm guessing that island would be Clockwork. She asked, getting nods from the two thieves. The only threat they really have is their captain Bear King and one of the commanders Honey Queen, who ate a Paramesha and Logia Devi fruit respectfully. Here Kid scoffed. So they're just a bunch of weaklings then? The reed-haired rolled his eyes. Honestly, they didn't even seem worth fighting. Sure, the Logia woman could be an annoyance, but they also had 2 Logia user, and between them and the rest of them they could deal with them easily. Kid was brought out of his thoughts when Hawkins tapped them on the shoulder, gaining his attention. It appears we're about to find out, he said, simply pointing to the side of the ship, and when Kid looked in the direction his eyes widened for a second before a smirk came to face. It appears an entire fleet had appeared, all flying sails and flags with clubs, diamonds, hearts and spades, with a bear head drawn over the crossbones. The leading ship was bigger than the rest of them, with a large bear head as its figurehead, with what appears to be a bathtub on its head. The tub was currently being used by a blonde slender woman who was looking down at them with a mix between amusement and condescending. Ah, what do we have here? She asked. A band of wannabe pirates, she said, looking over the men of the crew. And some attractive young women, she said, looking over at the woman. At this point the bathing woman was joined by a rather fat man in a big themed outfit. Hey, I think it's time for a pop quiz, he said, sweat starting to cover his body, getting looks of disgust from the Devil Kings. Question 1. Who is the man who will become king of the pirates? Exclamation mark quote. He asking, clearly trying to sound like a game show host. Izuku raised an eyebrow with his hand. Me, he said, simply, getting a mocking laughter from the man. Ha, don't be stupid, you idiot. It's clearly going to be my big bro Captain Bear King, he said, getting dismissive looks from everyone. The only thing moronic than that idea was your stupid riddle, Kid muttered loud enough for the two to hear, who took offense with Kid's comment. Well then, let's see how you handle this, Honey Queen said, getting out of the tub and putting on a yellow and purple jacket and pulling out a Den Den Mushi. All ships prepare to fire, and keep going until there's nothing left, she ordered, getting roars from the assembled pirates. Well, this is a problem, Law said with a frown, looking towards the ships and waiting to see which one will attack first, while Nami, Monae, Bonney Killer all prepared for battle, while Bordeaux stood infant of his younger brother protectively. Scared Trafalgar, Feel free to go hide in your bed, just means more fun for the rest of us. Kid taunted, attracting weapons and other metals from across the deck to form golem arms, while Hawkins merely drew his sword, not looking at all concerned. Well, Izuku, what's the plan? Nami asked, surrounded by Ama and Su, though she was still nervous as she saw the ship start to move towards them. However, when Izuku didn't answer her question, she looked over to where he was standing before, only to see the positron empty. Hey Nami. Killer called out before pointing towards the sky, where she looked and saw Izuku floating in the air. I guess we're about to find out, Nami muttered, answering her own question. As this was going on, Izuku was counting the amount of ships they were up against. Looks to be about 30. He thought. No sweat, he thought to himself before using the arms fruit to turn his arms into shotguns. The enemy pirates, seeing this, let out arrogant laughs at what they saw was a pathetic attempt to stop them. Look at that, boys, the brat thinks just because he has devil fruit powers he can stand up to us. One of the captains laughed before addressing kids. Tough shit, brat, but we've got Lady Honey Queen on our side, and her powers much better than being able to turn your arms into a bunch of guns, so go ahead and give us your best shot. He challenged arrogantly before laughing along with the rest of the pirates. They're dead. The Devil King pirates deadpanned as they watched the enemy laugh in hysterics while ignoring the thief brothers' pled for him to come back. Izuku just watched the laughing pirates with an annoyed expression. Well, they can't say they didn't ask for it, he thought as he started aiming for the fleet. Now more 100-fold gun. Izuku thought, firing off shot after shot towards the enemy ships. However, these shoots were by no means normal, as instantly the shots increased in size until they were the size of the ships. In an instant the laughter stopped and screams of fear and panic filled the air as many desperately ran around their ships, trying to find any way they can save themselves, but it was too late as the bullets collided with the fleet, seeking each of the ships instantly as well as those on board. The Trump pirates as well as the thief brothers were staring gaping at the scene, while the crew just watched, having known what would happen. Well, the hard part's done, Bonney said, taking an apple from a fruit bowl she had been munching on before looking up to see the shocked and angry faces of the two Trump pirate commanders. And they don't seem to be that thrilled about it, she observed, which turned out to be true as the man seemed to go so red with anger they wouldn't be surprised if steam came out of his nose and ears. You low-life scum, he finally exploded. Spikes appeared all over his body. How dare you go against your betters, he screeched, jumping into the air ready to impale this little upstart. Shink, only for cut marks to appear and blood to flow out as he dropped lifelessly into the ocean. Boo Jack, Honey Queen screamed, rushing to the side of the ship looking for her brother, only to see nothing before glaring up at her brother's killer, who turned out to be Killer, who was currently being held in the air by Izuku. You know I could have handled that, right? Izuku asked as he took his crew member back to their ship. What, and let you have all the fun? Killer joked back, getting a smirk from Izuku. Hey you two, who said you could have all the fun? Eustass asked, glaring at the two for taking all the fun, only growing more annoyed when all the two did was shrug before scoffing. Whatever, the Logia is mine, got it? He asked, only getting a smirk of amusement, who was besides Bonney eating a thing of meat now with the fruit to fill her gluttonous appetite. That I completely forgot about before rewatching the Sabayati arc, despite her moniker being Bonney the Glutton. And just how do you plan to touch her? The Dark Doctor half asked, half mocked, with the redhead just scowling at him. Shut the hell up, Trafalgar, I'll think of something, Kid said, but before he could, Monae spoke up behind him. Sorry Eustass, but it seems like Nami has it covered, Monae revealed before pointing above Honey Queen's ship. Kid followed her finger and saw what she was pointing before clicking his teeth. God damn it, he muttered under his breath. Honey Queen, however, was too enraged to notice anything. How dare you heartless monsters kill my brother, she screamed out, not noticing a shadow appear over her ship or the nervous murmuring of her crew as her body started turning into purple jelly, courtesy of the jelly fruit. And it all starts with you, she roared as she shot 3 shots of jelly towards Kyler. Crack-a-boom. In an instant everything, from the ship to the attack and Honey Queen herself, were engulfed in lighting as Sue floated above, a lazy smile on its face as it turned towards its creator. How was that, Nami? The cloud asked, with Nami giving a thumbs up with a giant smile on her face. That was perfect, Sue, Nami cheered, with Ama in the background nodding in agreement, proud of its fellow homie. Izuku, seeing the destruction, nodded. Seems those little contribution I gave really helped out. Izuku thought having given both Su and Ama some added features making them stronger than Zeus or Prometheus could ever hope to be. Snapping out of his thoughts, he turned his attention back to the wreckage of what remained of the enemy's ship. "Hey Izuku," Bonney called out, getting his attention as well as the rest of the crew. "I don't think you need to worry about Blonde coming back," she stated as she held up some bananas that appeared to be shimmering before the color scheme changed to light purple with swirls covering it. Izuku went over and took the fruits to inspect it. "Yeah, no doubt about it, this is the jelly fruit all right," he said, remembering Honey Queen's memory of eating it. "Well, that's 2 of them down," Izuku commented before he and the rest of the crew turned to the gaping brothers. "So why are you still here?" he asked, snapping them out of their funk. "That was amazing," Akisu said, stars in his eyes. "With your help we can definitely steal the diamond clock. Please say you'll help us," Akisu pleaded. Behind him Izuku could see hope in Boruto's eyes, though not for stealing the clock. Izuku knew through Luffy's memories the man just wanted to get Akisu home, something Izuku could understand and sympathize with. He was ready to help him, he just needed to get the rest of the crew on board. Turning around to face them, he asked the simple question. "Well guys, what do you say?" he asked, waiting for their responses. Kid just tsked. "I don't give a damn about this stupid clock, but I haven't gotten to yet, so yeah, I'll go, but the captain, this Bear King guy, is mine," Kid said, wanting nothing more than to fight someone. Doesn't really matter to me," Bonney shrugged, not really caring if they went or not with Killer, Monae and Law feeling the same. "Well, I'm in. I really want to see that diamond clock with my own eyes," Nami said, her eyes turning to Belly again. Hawkins was the only one who hasn't answered yet as he was checking his cards. Finally, after about half a minute, he looked up. "There is a 70% chance we will benefit from helping the 2 on their goal," Hawkins said before standing up. "It is best if we proceed," Hawkins said, with Izuku turning to the brothers. "Looks like we're in," he said, causing the 2 to cheer. "All right, let's go," Boruto yelled as he, with the help of Nami, directed the ship towards the island. Line break. "Well, there it is," Boruto announced as the Devil King pirates took in the island, placed on top of a giant yet weak-looking spiral staircase. The rest of the crew had their doubts about climbing it, however. Yeah, I'm sorry, but has the island always been like that?" Nami asked, not wanting to imagine what would happen if the spiral gave way, while Boruto shook his head no. Bear King had the people of the island build it when he and his crew first arrived, and with this being an island mostly made up of scientists, it was rather easy for them. The older brother explained as he prepared to jump of the boat and start climbing. "You guys ready?" he asked, while the Devil King pirates just looked toward their captain, who nodded and jerked his finger up. Instantly the boat started to shake before, to the disbelief of Boruto and Akisu, the boat started floating in the air before it began flying up towards the island. The brothers just continued to gasp at Izuku, who merely shrugged. "Float, float, fruit, lets me float any non-living thing I touch," he explained as the ship reached the island in no time at all. Soon the crew and brothers were standing on the island, planning on what to do next. "Right, Boruto and Akisu, why don't you 2 go ask around for the clock?" Izuku said before pointing at the house where he expected Akisu's parents were. "There looks like a good starting point," he suggested, with Boruto nodding. "Right then, now be careful, I know you guys are really strong, but they still have a lot of members in their crew left, not to mention the other commanders and Bear King himself," Boruto warned before pointing towards the giant green oil that lead up to the Trump Pirates base. "But first you need to get past that, a steep hillside with landmines buried all around the area," he warned, with Izuku nodding. "Thanks for the heads up. And good luck," the teen said, with Boruto nodding before heading off with Akisu. Once they were gone, Izuku turned back to his crew. "Right, everyone back on the ship. If we're going to get over that hill, we might as well just fly over it," Izuku said, with the rest of the crew nodding, and were just about to start heading towards the ship when they noticed Izuku placing his hand on the ground. Noticing their looks, Izuku raised an eyebrow. "What, you really think that little spiral could survive the kind of destruction we're capable of?" That was actually a good point, the Devil Kings had to admit, and if they went all out in this next fight, then the spiral could easily be destroyed, leaving the island and all those on it to fall to their deaths. "Thought so," At least now we don't have to worry about that," Izuku said, with the crew finally understanding what he had done. With that, the pirates quickly boarded their ship and took to the sky and flew right over the landmines. However, as this was going on, a terrible odor filled their noses. "Gah, what this hell? It smells like rancid meat," Bonney yelled, covering her nose, and for the first time since she could remember not feeling hungry in the slightest. The answer came when they spotted something flying in the air towards them, and when it got closer the crew was surprised to see it was a man. He was wearing a helmet with a number 1 on it, goggles, and brown shirt, which gives him an appearance of an airplane pilot. He also wears a fluffy jetpack, with the thruster located at his rear end. Under his helmet he has slick black hair, parted to one side. He also has pointed ears. Upon making him out, Law stepped up. "Everyone stand back, I'll take care of him," he told them before holding him palm up. "Room," he said as the transparent blue sphere engulfed them, their ship and several meters around them just as the new enemy flew into it. Upon seeing this, Law smirked before suddenly disappearing, and a few seconds later a cry of pain and panic could be heard as Law repapered his sword over his shoulder as the crew watched the man start to fly out of control before being launched towards the landmines. Boom. The pirates continued to watch as the man was sent flying by the explosion until he was well over the island border before he started to fall straight into the sea below. The Devil Kings were silent, not knowing what to make of that, until Monae finally giggled. "Well, that happened," she commented, which pretty much summed up the entire experience in a nutshell. So the crew proceeded on until they finally reached the castle, and upon seeing what was waiting for them, Kid let out a laugh. "Now that's more like it," he said, looking at what must have been 100 pirates waiting for them. Nami, upon seeing this, actually froze up seeing them all. Guys, are we sure we want to do this?" she questioned nervously, while Sue and Amma were ready to defend their creator, who was just thankful they hadn't been spotted yet. Thought by the way everyone was moving it was clear they were on guard, obviously having heard the explosions from earlier. "Ha, scared orange? Well, don't be. Not like you have to do any more of the fighting, 'cause I'm about to take care of them all at once," Kid said, ready to rampage when Izuku stopped him. "You're already getting to fight the captain, let the rest of us have some fun," the captain told the redhead, who scowled but nodded. Fine, so what's your plan?" he challenged, with Izuku looking down and spotted the 2 guards standing outside the gates, or more specially, the turret and rocket launcher they were holding. "You'll see, just sit back and enjoy the show," he said before stepping off the ship and descending to the island below. When he landed, the area shook and caused a giant wave of dust to rile up, blocking Izuku from view from the panicking guards, who didn't have a chance to defend themselves before being bashed away and knocked unconscious. As the dust cleared and the crew could see Izuku, they witnessed him pick up both the turret and rocket launcher, which drew some raised eyebrows. "Okay, so what's he doing with those? He can already turn his limbs into weapons," Law asked. However, his question was answered when before purple substance started leaking out of Izuku and covered the 2 weapons. The crew watched as the 2 weapons were taken apart and then reassembled as one before their very eyes. Kid himself was staring on in disbelief. The clank fruit. He muttered under his breath as he witnessed the power of the fruit he had wanted to eat for years as a kid, before noticing he hadn't spoken low enough, as everyone was now looking at him for an explanation, causing him to sigh. "Alright, listen up. What we just saw was the power of the clank fruit. It allows the user to create large mechanical structures and vassals. I heard the last guy who ate was able to end wars with it," Kid said, finishing his explanation, looking down eager to see what kind of machine Izuku had created. Back at the gates, Izuku could hear shouts of confusion from the pirates inside, no doubt having heard the noise. Izuku simply walked up to the wall and placed his hand on the door, which after a few seconds began to swell and after a few seconds ruptured and let loose a fiery explosion. Once the smoke cleared, Izuku found himself surrounded by enemies, both conscious and otherwise. "Oi, just who the hell do you are?" One of the pirates began, only to question, only for it to turn into a scream as Izuku unleashed his new weapon, shooting out rounds like the turret but detonating on impact, sending them flying in all directions. Quickly back inside, one of them shouted as he and a bunch of the others were about to do that when they were intercepted by an avalanche of snow seemingly falling from the sky. Izuku smiled upon seeing this. "Good work, Monae," he praised his newest crew member, who smiled in return. "Of course, Captain," she said as her captain caused his ship to descend, allowing the rest of the crew to hop off as well. Well, that was a good opener, but let's move on to the main event, shall we? Kid said, starting to go crazy wanting to fight something. Though he did stop and face Izuku. You were keeping the thing right, he said, pointing towards the gun in Izuku's hand as he floated up to ship. Good man, Kid said before heading towards the building. Now get the lead out, people, there are enemies to crush. He said, not even looking back to see if he's being followed. The rest of the crew just followed. Adu stops behind. Funny, I don't remember putting him in charge. Law said with a raised eyebrow as Killer just sighed. Sorry about him, he just gets like this sometimes. He said, his voice having a tone of embarrassment as he tired to explain the actions of his oldest and closest friend. The others simply rolled their eyes, having already gotten used to the redhead's mannerism as they caught up to him. From there, Izuku led the way, using the knowledge he had from the memories of Bear King and Honey Queen to avoid the traps laid out throughout the complex until eventually they had arrived just outside the throne room. Alright, Bear King's just on the other side of this door, you ready, kid? Izuku asked, getting a mad grin and nod from him. Though before they could open the door they had to jump back to avoid being hit by a round of feathers. So, you're the pirates who've somehow gotten this far. Well, no, this is as far as you'll get. A voice said from above, with a man jumping down from the ceiling and into view. He has long black hair tied up in a ponytail and a stitched scar across his face, extending from the right forehead to the left cheek. He has red marking on the right side of his face, and a tear-like design on the left. He also wears a strapped vest over purple clothes that has diamond design, with a yellow furred collar. Overall, he resembles a court jester. I am Pin Joker and I will be your... That was as far as he got before he fell back, blood gushing from a wound that just appeared. His eyes rolled into the back of his head as he hit the floor while Hawkins swung his blade to rid it of the enemy's blood. Now then, shall we continue? He asked before he pushed open the doors, as the crew walked inside. It's then when the crew finally saw Bear King himself. Bear King is a large man with black hair and whiskers, who is dressed in clothes that match his card and animal themes, which includes a furred captain's jacket with the collar shaped like a golden spade, a blue shirt underneath with the clover, heart and diamond pips symbols it with the top part unbuttoned, and a large teddy bear hat. His relatively thin arms and chest are covered in hair, with fur armbands on his wrist. The man was surprisingly silent as he took in the appearance of everyone who had just entered his throne room, as if trying to memorize their faces, though when he saw Bonney, Nami and Monae he did gain a blush and his eyes turned to hearts, but to his credit he did manage to shake off those thoughts rather quick. So you're the ones who've taken my beloved family from me? He asked, supremely serious, though given the situation it was reasonable. Kid meanwhile just stepped forward with a smirk. Yeah, we're the ones who massacred your worthless family, but don't you'll be seeing them again real soon. He said before charging forward and slamming his mechanical arm into the man, sending him flying through his throne and into a wall, creating massive cracks as well as shaking the entire castle. Bear King pulled himself from the wall and growled at the redhead. Bastard, you dare strike me, Bear King, the ruler of this island and the man who will be king of the pirates. Exclamation mark quote. Bear King demanded while Kid let out a cackling laugh. He laughed so long and so hard he ended up clutching his stomach and wheezing. You, king of the pirates, he said after getting control of himself, and just how do you plan on doing that? Kid asked mockingly, with Bear King gritting his teeth before smirking as he pulled out a remote control. With this, he said, pushing a button on the remote. The throne room suddenly started shaking violently as a panel on the floor opened up as a giant machine emerged. It was a four-wheeled tank with a giant cannon barrel that resembles a screw mounted on it, decoratively designed with the four-card suits. On the left side of the tank is a meter gauge and the back is a feed ramp for the giant bullet-shaped cannonballs with drill design. Upon its reveal, Bear King let out an arrogant laugh. You see, with this cannon no one will be able to stop me. First I'll use it to take over the East Blue and then the Grand Line, he declared, laughing before noticing the unimpressed looks on the Devil Kings. Quote, really? That's your whole plan? A single cannon? Bonney asked, hands on her hips and eyebrow raised high on the air. Yeah, are you really that big of an idiot to believe that's all it will take? Nami joined in while Monae giggled. Now Nami, there's no need to ask a question everyone knows the answer to. Monae chastised, getting giggles from the girls and snickers from the guys. As this was going on, Bear King was getting redder and redder until finally he couldn't take it anymore. "Shut it, you damn brats," he screamed, jumping into the control panel right behind the barrel of the gun. "I'll show you all the power of the King Cannon, starting with this mechanical bastard," he said, aiming the gun at Kid, who only responded with a sinister grin, waiting for the idiot to sign his own death warrant. And he didn't have to wait long, as the pirate captain immediately started charging up his weapon, ready to wipe the punk of the face of the earth. "Burn in hell," Bear King screamed before launching the bullet towards Kid. As the bullet approached, Kid could only snicker. "Moron," he muttered under his breath before raising his hand. "Repel," he said, as the bullet was immediately launched back right towards the shocked pirate captain, who had no time to react as the bullet tore through the barrel of the cannon and then Bear King himself, killing the pirate instantly before continuing through the rest of the machine, causing it to go up in a fiery explosion, violently shaking the entire island as the sound of something enormous falling entered the ears of everyone on the island. Nami, hearing this noise, broke out into a massive sweat as she turned a little blue. Guys, what was that?" she asked, terrified. She already knew the answer. "I'll go check it out," Monae volunteered, her arms turning to snow before they took the appearance of wings as Monae took to the air and flew out a hole in the wall that had been created due to the explosion. She reappeared a few seconds later and landed. "It's just as you thought, Nami. The spiral is completely gone. Good thing we have our captain with us." "How?" she asked, a small smirk on her face as she saw Nami beginning to shake at the thought of what could have happened. "Right, in any case you might want to lower the island back into the sea, Captain. The locals seem to be getting nervous," Law advised, as even from here he could hear the panicked screams from the island's inhabitants. Nodding, Izuku slowly and carefully lowered the island down into the sea. "Well, that's that. Should we get going?" Izuku said. Nods from the crew. Even Nami, who had wanted to steal the diamond clock, just wanted to get the hell out of there. "Yeah, let's go, but what about Bordo and Akisu?" Monae asked, wondering about the brothers, while Izuku just grinned. "Trust me, Monae, those two will be just fine," he reassured her, getting a smile and nod from the green-haired woman. Soon they had reached their ship, and upon getting back to the deck they found another surprise waiting for them on the table in the form of a red mango with swirls next to the jelly fruit. "Is that what I think it is?" Kid asked with a raised eyebrow, staring uncertainty at it, with Law nodding. "Yeah, another devil fruit, but which one and who did it get here?" the doctor asked as Izuku walked up to it. "This is the hard fruit. As for where it came from, my best guess is Bear King." Izuku reveled, though it wasn't much of a guess rather than the truth. "So that moron ate a devil fruit and didn't bother using it?" Bonney asked before scoffing. "Makes sense given how he acted and fought," she said, as even with the tiny amount of time she had known him she could easily tell Bear King was idiotic at best. "Doesn't matter. I killed him and it's not even noon." Kid spoke up before facing his crew. "Anyone got any ideas on how to kill some time?" he asked, not wanting to call it a day just yet. "I might have a few ideas." Izuku immediately froze up hearing this, as the rest of the crew got into fighting stances at hearing the unknown voice from on board their ship, but when the figure emerged from the captain's quarters, all but Nami and Monae froze, recognizing just who was on their ship. All except Izuku, who had frozen, looking away from the voice before slowly turning to face the man that had boarded their ship. Hawkeye. To be continued. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.